Chapter 662, The Emperor's Terrifying Strength. Another supreme being reaching the pinnacle of sublimation. This terrifying collision occurred instantly between the three of them. At the same time, a terrifying force descended directly upon the two dark sovereigns. The next second, the two dark sovereigns were blasted away by the terrifying force. The two dark sovereigns, who had been blasted away, looked in the direction of the Emperor with a hint of fear in their eyes, because at this point, they realized that the Emperor had no intention of letting them go. Instead, he continued to charge towards them, wielding the World Tree. The next second, an even more terrifying world law emanated from the Emperor's body. The Emperor, carrying terrifying power, charged towards the two dark sovereigns once again. A terrifying force once again descended upon these two dark sovereigns. Therefore, the two dark sovereigns instantly transformed into two streaks of light and headed directly into the depths of the universe. Having done all this, the Emperor relentlessly continued his attack towards the two dark sovereigns. Sensing the terrifying killing intent emanating from the Emperor, the supreme being within the dark forbidden zone instantly displayed a hint of anger on his face. Then, a figure from the dark forbidden zone, who was flying backwards, was shown with fierce flames burning on his body. More importantly, the light emitted by this burning flame was not any other color, but a terrifying white. The white flames instantly engulfed his body. After the white flames completely consumed his body, they continued to burn throughout the void. Soon, this supreme being in the dark forbidden zone was reduced to nothing but bones. However, at this moment, the bones on the body of this supreme being in the dark forbidden zone began to slowly emit a terrifying aura. Then this terrifying aura began to slowly spread. The next second, the aura emanating from this supreme being in the dark forbidden zone instantly grew to the peak of the great Emperor realm, and the person stopped in midair. The next second, he looked angrily in the direction of the Emperor. He transformed into a streak of light and charged towards the Emperor. A silver spear instantly appeared in his hand. The silver spear emanated a terrifying aura as it struck directly towards the Emperor. Upon witnessing this scene, the Emperor continuously used the World Tree within his hand to defend against this terrifying attack. After the two terrifying attacks collided, the two were sent flying backward. The Emperor, who had been sent flying backwards, finally showed a solemn expression, because at this moment, he also realized that the strength of the supreme being in the Forbidden Zone who had undergone a great sublimation far exceeded his imagination. Of course, it would be very difficult for this supreme being in the ultimate Forbidden Zone to defeat himself. After all, although the Emperor's strength has not yet reached the perfect realm of the Great Emperor, however, it is still quite easy to stop a powerful expert at the Great Emperor's perfection realm. More importantly, not every supreme being in the dark forbidden zone chooses to reach the ultimate level of sublimation. The other supreme being, who had just been sent flying backwards, stopped speaking immediately after sensing the supreme being's ultimate sublimation. Without the slightest hesitation, he sat cross-legged in the void to recover from his injuries. He acted as if the battle that had just taken place had nothing to do with him. The supreme being of the forbidden zone, who had reached the pinnacle of enlightenment within the dark forbidden zone, naturally also noticed this scene. However, he has no time to pay attention to this supreme being right now. His most important task was to deal with the Emperor in front of him. Therefore, the spear in his hand instantly transformed into a streak of light, charging towards the Emperor. Upon witnessing this scene, the Emperor swiftly used the World Tree in his hand to engage in a fierce battle with the supreme being from the dark forbidden zone. Two terrifying battles erupted instantly. More importantly, neither the supreme being nor the Emperor within the dark forbidden zone possessed the strength of a great emperor. However, the power generated by their battle far exceeded that of ordinary great emperors. Therefore, the aura emanating from both of them is now extremely terrifying. Of course, not just anyone can force the supreme being in the forbidden zone to reach the ultimate sublimation in this great battle. For example, the aura emanating from the several unconventional Dao-attaining powerhouses of the Xianyuan family is extremely terrifying. However, the supreme beings in these dark forbidden zones opposite them are also quite powerful. Therefore, their great war was in a state of equilibrium. There are even two unconventional Dao-achieving experts from the Xianyuan family who are weaker than the supreme beings in the dark forbidden zone. Even so, it would still take the supreme being in the dark forbidden zone some time to kill the Xianyuan family's unorthodox Dao-achieving expert. Moreover, they may not even have the opportunity within this certain time frame. After all, the real deciding factor in the battle is not them, but the battle between the true top experts. Therefore, the great war in this universe is currently in a state of balance. Of course, aside from the Void Emperor and others forcing the Supreme Beings in the Forbidden Zone to undergo extreme sublimation. At this moment, the battle between Xianyuan Wudao and the two Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zones in front of him was very balanced. It was as if these two Supreme Beings in the Forbidden Zone also understood that they could not completely kill Xianyuan Wudao directly. Therefore, at this point, these two Supreme players in the penalty area were also tanking. After all, if they also chose to truly unleash their last trump card, they might not be able to kill Xianyuan Wudao in front of them. After all, Xianyuan Wudao was a being who possessed the human king physique. Moreover, their strength has reached an extremely terrifying level. Therefore, at this time, their great battle with Xianyuan Wudao was in a state of equilibrium. Xianyuan Wudao was also holding a terrifying long spear, although the laws emanating from his spear were not the laws of the human emperor. However, Xianyuan Wudao originally cultivated the law of the human king. Therefore, at this moment, the aura emanating from him naturally exerted a sense of pressure on even supreme-level powerhouses. More importantly, he was originally one of the top talents of the Xianyuan family. Moreover, he once received some of the inheritance from the Yellow Emperor. Therefore, he is also among the top in this realm. It can be said that his current great battle could last for 100 or even 1,000 years. Of course, how long this great battle will last depends on when the battle between the truly top-tier experts will end. After all, both Xianyuan Wudao, a top expert, and the two top supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone knew that the outcome of this great battle would be a battle between the two top experts of the Great Building Empire, the top experts of the Heavenly God Academy, and the top experts in their Forbidden Zone. Their war will only end after the results of those two major battles are known. As for the powerful figures who perished before the outcome of these two great battles, it was naturally within their capacity to bear the consequences. Chapter 663, The Terrifying Strength of the Sword Emperor, the methods of top experts in the Forbidden Zone. While the great battle raged on in this universe, in an unknown universe, three top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone were engaged in a fierce battle with the Sword Emperor. Although the Sword Emperor's strength was at the level of a 5-generation emperor, but his strength far exceeded his cultivation level. He could easily annihilate a great emperor-level expert with a single, terrifying sword strike. Therefore, he has no problem engaging in a major battle with these three top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone. Of course, these top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone are not weak. Otherwise, how could they possibly become top experts in the Dark Forbidden Zone? These top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone were emanating a terrifying aura. One of the top experts in the Dark Forbidden Zone was also holding a black longsword. The black longsword in his hand gleamed with a chilling light. The terrifying sword light swept across the entire universe. It seemed as if it could completely cleave this universe in two. This terrifying sword light shot directly towards the Sword Emperor. Upon seeing this, the Sword Emperor smiled with utter disdain. After all, when it comes to swordsmanship, he is the supreme ancestor of all swordsmen. He glanced at the supreme expert from the Dark Forbidden Zone with a hint of disdain in his eyes. Then his fingers came together, and the next second, a terrifying force erupted from his body. As this terrifying power erupted from his body, the Sword Emperor's overall strength became extremely formidable. At the same time, a sword light that seemed capable of completely annihilating the entire sky erupted from his body. Then the sword light shot directly towards the Dark Sovereign wielding the sword. The terrifying power directly obliterated the sword light unleashed by the Dark Sovereign. Then, carrying an indelible aura, they continued their attack towards the Dark Sovereign. Then, this terrifying sword energy directly enveloped the Dark Sovereign. A terrifying power is relentlessly encroaching upon the Dark Lord. The other two Dark Sovereigns were also instantly shocked when they saw this. Then, a top-tier Dark Lord swung his long sword down into the sky. The next second, a long sword spanning the entire universe appeared in the sky. The long sword, spanning the entire universe, slashed directly towards the Sword Emperor. The terrifying power caused the surrounding planets to tremble. Many forces were completely reduced to ashes and vanished the moment they received the terrifying longsword. Of course, the aura emanating from the Sword Emperor at this moment was naturally quite strong. Two terrifying silver-white lights instantly emanated from his pupils. The two silvery white lights instantly transformed into two sword energies, directly stopping the terrifying longsword that was falling from the sky. At the same time, the two silvery white lights transformed into two sword energies, directly attacking the Dark Supreme. The terrifying power instantly annihilated the surrounding laws. Meanwhile, another top expert from the Dark Forbidden Zone used several Earth-based weapons to unleash a black beam of light. This black beam of light seemed to be able to pierce through time and space as it hurtled towards the Sword Emperor. Upon seeing this, the Sword Emperor gently drew his longsword. Then, a long river of sword energy instantly appeared behind him. The river of sword energy seemed poised to annihilate the entire world. The terrifying power instantly caused the entire space to tremble. At the same time, the black light was instantly enveloped by his sword energy. Then, in an instant, it completely destroyed the black beam of light. More importantly, these sword energies continued to hurtle towards the three top experts in the Dark Forbidden Zone. A terrifying force is constantly enveloping them. Upon seeing this, the Sword Emperor continued to unleash the terrifying aura of the sword's laws upon himself. A terrifying aura instantly enveloped their unknown universe. Fortunately, there were no living beings in this unknown universe. Otherwise, with his terrifying Sword Dao laws, he could have completely destroyed all the living beings in these universes. This is the true terror of the Sword Emperor. More importantly, the terrifying power emanating from him is also extremely terrifying. Even the three top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him looked at the Sword Emperor with complicated expressions. At this moment, they finally realized just how powerful this person was. I never expected that there would be such a terrifying existence as you in the Great Xia Empire. But why have I never seen someone like you before? Then, the top expert from the Dark Forbidden Zone, wielding a long sword, looked incredulously in the direction of the Sword Emperor and asked a question. At the same time, he had a look of doubt on his face. He was clearly wondering why he had never seen such a powerful being before. Unless the Sword Emperor is not one of the top experts in their universe. Otherwise, he should have felt it. Of course, since the Sword Emperor was summoned, he naturally couldn't sense him. If you can't sense me, it means you're weak. The weak are naturally unworthy of sensing my presence. At this moment, the Sword Emperor calmly looked at the top expert from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him and spoke. After he finished speaking, the aura of the sword law on his body continued to envelop this world. At the same time, he instantly trapped this world within the cage of his Sword Dao laws. This is the true strength of this Sword Emperor. The other two top experts in the Dark Forbidden Zone were also furious after hearing the Sword Emperor's reply, because they had never sensed the aura of this Sword Emperor. That means they're also considered weaklings in the eyes of this Sword Emperor. Thinking of this, the three supreme experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone all looked at the Sword Emperor in front of them with anger in their eyes. Then, an even more terrifying aura suddenly erupted from their bodies. The next second, the three people's ultimate imperial weapons gathered together. As these three supreme imperial weapons gathered together, a terrifying aura continuously emanated from the three individuals. At the same time, the three supreme imperial weapons began to slowly merge into one. The next second, a weapon that exuded an aura far exceeding that of an ultimate imperial weapon appeared in front of the three of them. Clearly, this weapon, having fused with the power of a third-grade supreme imperial weapon, far exceeds the grade of a supreme imperial weapon. Chapter 664 The Great Battle at the End of Heaven. The Contempt of the Heavenly God Academy. It can be said that their current weapons are close to the legendary divine artifacts. More importantly, this terrifying power continues to sweep across the land. The laws of this universe seemed unable to withstand this terrifying power. So, under the influence of this terrifying power, this universe began to tremble. Even many laws are being destroyed under the influence of this terrifying power. This is the power that truly shines between top-tier experts. It could even be said that even a powerful figure at the level of an emperor could be easily and completely defeated by the attacks they unleashed. The Sword Emperor, however, showed no sign of worry upon seeing this scene. Instead, he looked calmly at the three top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him. Then a calm smile appeared on his face. The next second, a terrifying aura was released from his body. A beam of sword light seemed to descend from the celestial realm. The terrifying sword light swept across the entire universe. It could even be said that this terrifying sword light was the only light in this universe. As the sword light swept across the entire universe, its terrifying power instantly surged towards the three top experts in the Dark Forbidden Zone. The next second, this terrifying force landed directly on the weapon that was fused together in front of the three top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone. The terrifying forces collided instantly, creating a violent spark. Moreover, the force generated by this terrifying collision made the entire sky extremely terrifying. The next second, the three top experts in the Dark Forbidden Zone instantly transformed into beams of light and flew backward. Even the laws of the universe surrounding them could not stop the three from regressing. The Sword Emperor, however, wore a calm expression. Of course, more importantly, the terrifying aura emanating from him was constantly being released. He seemed to be a true master of the sword, standing between heaven and earth. Then, the long sword in his hand was gently flicked out again. The next second, an even more terrifying sword light shot directly towards the three top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone. A terrifying force swept across the universe once again. At the same time, true sword energy permeated this universe. Upon witnessing this scene, the three top experts within the Dark Forbidden Zone swiftly unleashed their own unique laws. The power emanating from the fused weapon far exceeded what a typical Great Emperor could withstand. A terrifying force instantly followed the three top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone, hurtling towards the Sword Emperor. A terrifying battle instantly erupted once again. At the same time, a truly terrible war has broken out again. This universe is also being constantly destroyed because of the great battle between these people. Fortunately, there are no living beings in this universe. Otherwise, their fate would be extremely tragic. Meanwhile, the great battle between the Sword Emperor in this universe and these top experts in the Dark Forbidden Zone was continuing. Meanwhile, in another universe billions of light years away from them, perhaps it could be said that this is not a universe. This is the depths of the void, or rather, the end of the sky. The Gun Emperor of the Great Xia Empire looked calmly at the three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy opposite him. These three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy are the three most outstanding members of the Academy. They now exuded a terrifying aura as they stared at the Gun Emperor opposite them. Then, Tianju from the Heavenly God Academy slowly stepped forward, his eyes filled with killing intent and fervor as he looked at the Gun Emperor in front of him. Your strength is indeed impressive, but unfortunately you will soon perish. The former Emperor Xianyuan of the Xianyuan family was driven out of this universe by us right here. His words were laced with a strong threat, and his face was filled with murderous intent. Although the Gun Emperor in front of them was at the same level of strength. However, as top experts of the Heavenly God Academy, they naturally had a thorough understanding of their own strength. More importantly, they also have two individuals on their side with the same strength as the Gun Emperor, although the other one is not as strong as the Gun Emperor. However, in their minds, defeating the Gun Emperor in front of them was still very easy. Of course, all of this is just what they think. After all, the Gun Emperor's strength far exceeded their expectations. Some people will die here today, but I won't be the one who stays here. After hearing Tianjue's words, Gun Emperor calmly replied to Tianjue with a faint smile on his face. For him, anyone who tries to stop him will perish here. The three aces of the Heavenly God Academy were also beings he could slaughter. Upon hearing the words of the Gun Emperor, Diju of the Heavenly God Academy displayed a murderous intent on his face. I didn't expect the people of the Great Xia Empire to be so arrogant. But do you think you can suppress us with your meager strength? Then he slowly stepped forward, looked at the Gun Emperor in front of him, and spoke. After saying that, he ignored his injuries and released his terrifying aura. The next second, he transformed into a streak of light, and a celestial sword appeared in his hand. Without showing any mercy, they charged straight towards the Gun Emperor. Gun Emperor remained remarkably calm upon witnessing this scene. At this moment, he seemed not to see the top expert from the Heavenly God Academy in front of him at all. He simply thrust his spear forward in an unremarkable manner. A terrifying force instantly swept across the entire space. It even caused the surrounding laws to erupt in a violent upheaval due to its terrifying power. Even so, the spear in his hand still clashed with the immortal sword in the hand of this top expert from the Heavenly God Academy. At the moment of collision, both weapons exuded a terrifying aura. Then, the top expert from the Heavenly God Academy was sent flying backwards. Gun Emperor, on the other hand, stood calmly in place. Then he gently withdrew the spear from his hand. He looked at the top experts of the Heavenly God Academy in front of him with a hint of disdain in his eyes. If this is all the strength you've got, then this fight is far too boring. Of course, there was no attempt to hide his disdain in his voice, and he lightly waved the spear in his hand. A terrifying spear light instantly emanated from his spear. Then he charged directly at the other two top experts from the Heavenly God Academy in front of him. Chapter 665 The Power of the Gun Emperor and the Expectations of the Yellow Emperor. When Wu Ju from the Heavenly God Academy saw this scene, a look of shock instantly appeared on his face, because he hadn't expected the Gun Emperor in front of him to be so powerful. However, upon seeing the terrifying attack hurtling towards the three of them, he quickly moved his hands. Then, a silver-white shield instantly appeared in front of him. Moreover, this silver-white shield emitted a terrifying light. Then, the silver-white shield instantly blocked the Gun Emperor's attack. However, the silver-white shield was trembling incessantly. Clearly, the Gun Emperor's attack, just now, was only a normal strike. However, it would indeed be difficult for Wu Ju from the Heavenly God Academy to resist. Tianju, who was the first to speak, slowly took out a silver-white light from his bosom. Then, the silvery white light instantly transformed into a silvery white spear. The moment the spear appeared, his aura became incredibly terrifying. In an instant, he seemed like a soldier on the battlefield. However, the moment he held the spear in his hand, a hint of disdain instantly filled the eyes of the spear master opposite him. You dare to use a gun in front of me? At the same time, his icy voice came through. In an instant, without any surprise, the spear in the Spear Emperor's hand shot directly toward Tianju. More importantly, the power of the spear in the Gun Emperor's hand has been greatly enhanced this time. He was clearly furious with Tianjue, who used the same weapon as him. Upon seeing this, Tianjue immediately brandished the long spear in his hand. Then a silver-white dragon instantly appeared on the spear in his hand. Without the slightest hesitation, the silver-white dragon charged straight towards the Gun Emperor. The terrifying power instantly tore apart the surrounding space. Then it seemed as if it wanted to devour the Gun Emperor completely. However, the Gun Emperor is a top-tier expert in the art of gunplay. This attack was very easy for him to withstand. Then, the spear in his hand trembled slightly. The next second, he fired a shot in all directions. Then, a fiery red phoenix instantly appeared behind him. This fiery red phoenix swept across the sky with flames, charging towards the silver-white dragon in front of it. The terrifying power tore the silver-white dragon to shreds. At the same time, it charged towards the three masters of the Heavenly God Academy ahead, carrying enormous flames. Upon witnessing this scene, Wu Ju from the Heavenly God Academy naturally showed a worried expression on his face. At the same time, he quickly threw out the silver-white shield in his hand. The next second, the silver-white shield in the sky began to grow larger and larger. In the blink of an eye, the silver-white shield appeared as if it were Mount Buzhou, capable of supporting the heavens, blocking their path. Gun Emperor's shot was also neutralized by this terrifying silver-white shield. However, Wu Ju coughed up a mouthful of blood at this moment, because he bore most of the damage from that attack alone. Therefore, he is already unable to withstand such harm. More importantly, he is now at the cost of serious injury to withstand this terrifying attack. Upon seeing this, the Gun Emperor chose not to hold back. Instead, they continued to attack Tianju in front of them. Upon seeing this, Tianjue immediately sealed away the terrifying injuries on his body, although the laws of the human emperor within him were still constantly damaging his body. But now he can no longer pay attention to these human laws. After all, if he continues to pay attention to these people and the law, what awaited him next was being killed by the Gun Emperor of the Great Xia Empire. Upon seeing this, the other two quickly charged towards the Gun Emperor. The battle between the several people instantly erupted at the edge of the sky. The turmoil of their battle even triggered a horrific riot in the surrounding area. Even many void rifts began to appear as the Great War began. Of course, it's because they are currently located at the legendary end of the sky. Therefore, their current great battle does not have a significant impact on this universe. While the Gun Emperor was engaged in a fierce battle with several top experts from the Heavenly God Academy, at this very moment, in an unknown space, a middle-aged man dressed in a golden battle robe suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze, filled with amusement, drifted toward an unknown direction. At the same time, his eyes showed not only amusement, but also surprise. This person is none other than the Yellow Emperor, who was trapped outside the universe. He sensed this aura the instant the three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy disregarded his human emperor law. I never expected that there would be someone in that universe who could fight those three old guys. It seems an extraordinary existence has appeared in that universe. I just wonder if this person will be driven out of that universe by those three shameless old guys. Then, the Yellow Emperor gazed leisurely into the distance and spoke. After he finished speaking, a look of helplessness appeared on his face. After all, he was well aware of the shamelessness of those three old guys from the Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, he is now beginning to worry about the top expert who is fighting against the three old guys from the Heavenly God Academy. I wonder if the person with the destiny of becoming a human emperor in this era will attain the realm of human emperor. Then, with a hint of anticipation in his eyes, the Yellow Emperor looked into the distance and spoke. Although he could sense that the three old guys from the Heavenly God Academy were already fighting with others despite their injuries. However, he is currently unaware that Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor's destiny, has already begun his tribulation. After all, there was a significant gap between the Xianyuan Emperor who was expelled from that universe and that universe itself. This could even be considered the reason why he couldn't find the whereabouts of that universe. So now he can only hope that Chu Fan will grow up and be able to guide him to find his way home. You must know that the Yellow Emperor waited here for so long because he wanted to return to that universe, which was his former home, although he is currently in an unknown space. In other words, the current Emperor Xianyuan is in a strange space. While he didn't need to worry about his lifespan here, he became bored after a while. After all, he was the only one in this strange space. There are no living beings in the universe. This is why he felt so bored and hoped that the person destined to be the emperor of this era could guide him home. Chapter 666, The Thunder Tribulation transforms into the human Emperor Xianyuan, the first great battle between two generations of human emperors. After gazing expectantly into the distance, the Yellow Emperor slowly closed his eyes again. All he can do now is keep improving his strength, because the Yellow Emperor himself had guessed that there should be even more outstanding individuals in the Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, even if he were to return to that universe, he would still have to face even more powerful beings within the Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, before returning, he naturally needed to raise his strength to an even more terrifying level. In the past million years, he has fully recovered from his injuries and also raised his strength to a new level. If the current Emperor Xianyuan were facing the three masters of the Heavenly Divine Academy, he could absolutely end this great battle with an overwhelming victory. However, the most important thing is that the current Emperor Xianyuan cannot return to that universe. Therefore, at this point, he naturally could not seek revenge against the three absolutes. Just as the Yellow Emperor was anticipating Chu Fan's performance. At this moment, Chu Fan's tribulation had also reached an extremely fierce stage, because at this moment, the thunder in the sky above his head also began to slowly become more intense. Although he is currently wielding the human Emperor sword and constantly battling the lightning tribulations in the sky. However, one can sense that the power of the lightning in the sky is constantly increasing as the number of lightning strikes increases. Even Chu Fan is starting to struggle now. Chu Fan gazed at the lightning tribulation in the sky with a melancholy look in his eyes, because he could sense that the power of the lightning tribulations descending from the sky had reached the mid-stage of the great Emperor realm. It should be noted that the tribulations encountered by powerful emperors during their tribulations are at most at the early stage of the emperor level, and such tribulations only appear at the very end. However, the tribulation Chu Fan is facing now far exceeds the tribulation faced by those great emperor-level experts before their tribulations. This clearly shows the gap between breaking through the human emperor realm and the great emperor realm. This is why there is such a large gap between the human emperor realm and the great emperor realm. Then, Chu Fan's eyes showed a thoughtful expression. Soon he flew up, holding the human emperor's sword. Without the slightest hesitation, his eyes met the surging thunder. The long sword in his hand thrust out directly. A terrifying golden emperor's law shot directly towards the lightning in the sky. The thunder seemed to have been provoked at this moment. Suddenly, a terrifying, surging purple bolt of lightning appeared amidst the thunder. However, the lightning bolt did not strike in Chu Fan's direction. Instead, it kept walking around Chu Fan. Then, a small world made of lightning instantly appeared in the sky. This small world instantly enveloped Chu Fan completely. This makes it impossible for anyone outside to see where Chu Fan is right now. Meanwhile, Chu Fan, inside the small world, was constantly observing his surroundings. He found himself seemingly in a prison made of lightning, but a terrifying crack was constantly appearing before him. The next second, a figure made of lightning appeared in front of him. More importantly, this figure composed of lightning also exudes the awe-inspiring power of the human emperor's law. The aura emanating from these human emperors was also extremely terrifying. More importantly, with the blessing of the heavenly Tao, the aura of the human emperor's law emanating from them far surpasses that of ordinary early-stage human emperors. Chu Fan was also surprised to realize this. However, when he saw the face of the middle-aged man in front of him, which was made of lightning, he immediately guessed the man's identity. He had seen this person's face when he obtained the inheritance of the Xianyuan Emperor from the Xianyuan family. I never expected that heaven would use the former Emperor Xianyuan to deal with me. But even if it is the Emperor Xianyuan who was created by heaven, how could he possibly stop me? After saying that, Chu Fan gripped the Emperor's sword tightly in his hand. At the same time, his eyes were filled with a fighting spirit. He wanted to see just how powerful the Xianyuan Emperor, hailed as the greatest genius in millennia, truly was. Whether he could defeat the Xianyuan Emperor, who was once hailed as the most talented man in tens of millions of years within the same realm. And the Yellow Emperor within the lightning seemed to come alive at this moment. The Xianyuan sword in his hand was radiating a terrifying light. The next second, the Xianyuan sword in his hand unleashed a terrifying bolt of lightning. Although he was only using the human emperor's law. However, The current Emperor Xinyuan is composed of the tribulation lightning of the heavenly Tao. So this terrifying lightning sword light also carries the laws of the Emperor and the laws of lightning. Its terrifying power instantly surpassed that of a mid-stage great Emperor. Upon witnessing this scene, Chu Fan's face instantly showed a hint of surprise. However, it was clear that he showed no sign of worry at this moment. Instead, he calmly watched the terrifying sword light before him. Then, the Emperor's sword in his hand instantly emitted an aura of the Emperor's law. Then he slashed forward with his sword. The terrifying sword light instantly swept across the entire sky. At the same time, the two attacks collided instantly. The next second, both the Xinyuan Emperor, who was composed of lightning, and Chu Fan were directly blasted back by this terrifying power. However, the two who had just retreated immediately attacked the two men with their weapons in hand. After all, the two of them had reached a very similar level of strength at this point. Moreover, both of them were using the human Emperor's law. Of course, more importantly, both of them originally possessed the destiny of becoming human emperors. Therefore, the two men, who were fighting again, clashed their long swords repeatedly. More importantly, the two seemed to be fighting each other in a parallel universe. The two men's skills and techniques were remarkably similar. The two men's battle began in an instant. Moreover, lightning continued to flash throughout the entire thunderous area. As the lightning flashed, Chu Fan felt wave after wave of terrifying energy rushing towards him. However, at this moment, he was focused on fighting the Xinyuan Emperor, who was formed from lightning, in front of him. Therefore, at this moment, he naturally paid no attention to the terrifying aura of lightning. More importantly, there was a terrifying force around him constantly resisting the lightning. These are precisely his laws governing the human emperor. The law of the human king had a protective effect on him during the great battle. Therefore, Chu Fan is now focused on fighting the Xinyuan human emperor, who was summoned by the heavenly Tao, right in front of him. Chapter 667 The Perception of the Xinyuan Sword, the Despair of the Xinyuan Family. While Chu Fan was engaged in a fierce battle with the Xinyuan Emperor, who was formed from lightning, in the world of lightning, he was naturally invisible to the outside world. All they could see was the lightning flashing in the sky. And you can see that within this constantly flashing lightning, terrifying fluctuations are still emanating from the void. Although the power generated by these fluctuations is not particularly large. However, they could also sense that the emperor of the Great Xia Empire was probably currently battling these lightning tribulations in the sky. Therefore, everyone's eyes were drawn to the lightning. Of course, the powerful figures who were engaged in a fierce battle would not be distracted and would not look at the lightning. Those now looking into this thunder are the unorthodox Taoists of the heaven-mending pavilion and the quasi-emperor level powerhouses from the Holy Lands. Everyone is speculating whether Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor's destiny, can survive this tribulation. If a great emperor-level expert were to undergo tribulation, they would naturally be able to guess what would happen. Moreover, some top experts had even witnessed great emperor-level experts undergoing tribulation. After all, they had sealed themselves away before. Therefore, it wouldn't be particularly difficult for them since they had seen these things before. However, they had never witnessed a powerful being at the human emperor realm undergoing tribulation. After all, in the past tens of millions of years, there's only been one expert at the human emperor level who has successfully transcended the tribulation. Moreover, when that powerful figure at the human emperor realm was undergoing tribulation, many people didn't take it seriously. After all, apart from the Yellow Emperor, there has never been a being at the human emperor realm. It could even be said that the human emperor realm only appeared after the appearance of the Yellow Emperor. Otherwise, he would have only reached the great emperor realm before. Of course, he once possessed the supreme realm and the realm of unconventional enlightenment. However, at that time, the strength of the experts in these two realms was not particularly formidable. He only reached the human emperor realm after the appearance of the Yellow Emperor. It was only then that I realized firsthand that the human emperor realm far surpassed the great emperor realm. Therefore, many people are now looking at the terrifying lightning tribulation in the sky with a hint of anticipation in their eyes. They also wanted to see if another Yellow Emperor would emerge in this era. At the same time, they also wanted to see just how much strength and growth Chu Fan could achieve in this era. Many people who thought about this stared intently at the thunder in the sky. Of course, the Xinyuan family was probably the most concerned about the lightning in the sky this time. At this moment, the other top experts in the Xinyuan family who had not participated in this great battle were all staring intently at the lightning. The top expert, standing at the very front, was a quasi-emperor at the peak of his realm. He looked towards the direction of the thunder with a mixture of worry and anticipation in his eyes. This is a scene that has never occurred when a powerhouse at the great emperor level undergoes tribulation. He is probably currently fighting against the top powerhouses composed of the heavenly Tao in the world of thunder, just as recorded. Only by winning the battle against the top powerhouses composed of the heavenly Tao can he successfully overcome this tribulation. This top expert from the Xianyuan family slowly began to watch the lightning in the sky. Although they did not survive the human emperor tribulation, they did not even see any clues about the human emperor's tribulation. However, the Xianyuan emperor of their Xianyuan family left behind a few rumors. Therefore, they naturally knew that if a person wanted to survive the tribulation of the human emperor, the first thing he had to endure was the test that heaven would give to this top expert. The test for him was quite simple. He was given a top-notch opponent. As for who this opponent was, Emperor Xianyuan never revealed it, because the Yellow Emperor's opponent was a top-tier powerhouse from the ancient era. It took Emperor Xianyuan a long time to defeat that top expert. Therefore, his tribulation was delayed for quite some time. I wonder who Chu Fan will be facing this time. Is it an enemy from the primordial era, an enemy from the desolate era, or an enemy that our ancestors faced in the past? Another top expert from the Xianyuan family, standing beside him, slowly stepped forward and spoke. After he finished speaking, there was still a hint of curiosity and doubt in his eyes, because he also wanted to see who Chu Fan's enemy was. Could it be the same enemy that their Xianyuan family's Xianyuan emperor encountered when he underwent tribulation? The enemy he encountered was none other than His Majesty the Human Emperor, who was composed of the heavenly Tao. Just as the top experts of the Xianyuan family were still speculating about who Chu Fan's enemy was, a clear and ethereal voice slowly reached their ears. Upon hearing the sound, everyone turned to look in the direction from which it came. At this moment, the Xianyuan sword, the sword once carried by the Yellow Emperor, was trembling continuously. It seemed as if they were joyful, or perhaps expectant. The sound just now was emitted by the Xianyuan sword of the Yellow Emperor. Why is it the human emperor ancestor? Shouldn't the heavenly Tao give other opponents to the holder of the human emperor's destiny in this era? After hearing Xianyuan Jian's words, no one doubted him at all. Instead, they looked at Xianyuan Jian with surprise and asked him questions. At the same time, they were also very worried. After all, they naturally understood just how powerful their Xianyuan family's Emperor Xianyuan was. It could even be said that, for them, their Xianyuan family's Xianyuan emperor was an invincible being. So when they heard that Chu Fan was going to face the Xianyuan emperor, a look of helplessness and worry instantly appeared on their faces. Because at this moment, they dared not imagine whether Chu Fan could actually fight against the phantom of the Xianyuan emperor. After all, in their hearts, the Yellow Emperor was an invincible being. Perhaps the heavenly Tao wants to see a great battle between the two human emperors. After all, if this battle were to manifest other top experts from the primordial era or the desolate era, it wouldn't be a great test for the holder of the human emperor's destiny in this era. That's why it chose to use His Majesty the Human Emperor to test the holder of the human emperor's destiny in this era. The Xianyuan sword emitted that ethereal sound once again. At the same time, the blade of the Xianyuan sword continued to tremble. At that moment, he felt as if he wanted to fly into the sky and fight alongside his former emperor, although he could now sense the aura belonging to the human emperor realm. Of course, this is the aura of the Xianyuan emperor belonging to the Xianyuan family. However, at this time, Xianyuan sword also knew that the Xianyuan emperor in the tribulation was not the real Xianyuan emperor. Now he only hopes that the Xianyuan emperor in the tribulation is not particularly powerful. Only in this way can the possessor of the human emperor destiny of this era easily pass through this tribulation. Chapter 668, The Emperor's Lingering Fear at the Heavenly God Academy, and the difference between the Heaven-Mending Pavilion and the Holy Land. Upon hearing Xianyuan Jin's words, the other experts from the Xianyuan family displayed expressions of despair and helplessness. If the owner of this human emperor's destiny were to encounter other top-tier emperor-level powerhouses from the primordial era or the desolate era, then the top experts of the Xianyuan family would still believe that the owner of this era's human emperor's destiny could easily overcome this human emperor tribulation. However, Chu Fan is now facing off against the Xianyuan human emperor of their Xianyuan family, so they don't believe that Chu Fan can survive this tribulation. After all, to them, their Xianyuan family's Emperor Xianyuan was an invincible being. Of course, at this time, some members of the Xianyuan family were hoping that Chu Fan could survive this tribulation. Only if Chu Fan can survive this tribulation will their Xianyuan family's human emperor have a chance to return. However, if Chu Fan can truly survive this tribulation, it would mean that he has defeated the human emperor ancestor of the Xianyuan family within the same realm. This is a fact that is hard for them to accept. Therefore, the eyes of everyone in the Xianyuan family now held complex expressions. They also hoped that Chu Fan could defeat their own human emperor ancestor. At the same time, they did not expect Chu Fan to be able to defeat their Xianyuan family's human emperor ancestor. After all, in their hearts, the human emperor ancestor of the Xianyuan family was an invincible existence. While the people from the Xianyuan family had very complicated expressions, the quasi-emperor level experts from the Batian Pavilion were also watching the terrifying lightning tribulation from the sky. At this moment, they were also very eager to find out what exactly was in this lightning tribulation. After all, the tribulations faced by emperor-level powerhouses during their tribulations are not this terrifying. At the same time, they were also curious about what kind of existence the human emperor tribulation was for a powerful being at the human emperor realm. Therefore, these people nowadays all have a curious look in their eyes. Even the quasi-emperor realm expert from the heaven-mending pavilion who was holding the heaven-mending stone had a curious look on his face at this moment, because they also did not know the specific details of the human emperor's tribulation. Of course, besides that, the Heavenly God Academy was also paying attention to the situation here. At this moment, the powerful emperors of the Heavenly God Academy were hesitating whether or not to make a move. After all, there's still 3 great emperor-level experts in the Heavenly God Academy who have not yet made a move. However, although they are very hesitant, they have not chosen to take action directly. After all, at this point, they were still speculating whether the Great Xia Empire had any other trump cards up its sleeve. After all, the Great Xia Empire has some very powerful and mysterious trump cards, such as the Gun Emperor and Sword Emperor, who have only recently appeared. The 2 of them were already at the top level in terms of strength. If their strength hadn't reached the top level, they would have been defeated by the top experts in the Forbidden Zone and the 3 masters of the Heavenly God Academy long ago. However, none of the top experts and the 3 masters of the Heavenly God Academy who went and have returned. From this, one can sense that the 3 unique skills of the Heavenly God Academy and the top experts in the Forbidden Zone have not yet dealt with the 2 top masters of the Great Xia Empire. Moreover, the Great Xia Empire has more than just these 2 top experts. At this moment, there was also a chaotic ancient emperor who was engaged in a great battle in the sky. His strength was among the top tier of the great emperor-level experts from the Heavenly God Academy. This is why they are so worried about whether Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor's destiny, can survive this human emperor tribulation. Of course, it's impossible to get them to take action at this point, because they still cherish their own lives very much. After all, a great emperor-level being had just fallen in the Heavenly God Academy not long ago. They certainly couldn't follow in the footsteps of this emperor-level powerhouse. Therefore, the remaining great emperor-level experts from the Heavenly God Academy are currently watching the battle. It could even be said that, apart from hoping that Chu Fan wouldn't survive this ordeal, they haven't taken any other action. As for the other powerful figures in the Holy Lands, they all wore forced smiles on their faces, although their strength was indeed terrifying. However, they naturally cannot participate in such a major battle, unless they can actually use those supreme imperial weapons from the Holy Land. However, it is clear that they will not choose to use the ultimate imperial weapon now. More importantly, the top experts in these Holy Lands are all those who are willing to risk everything, so they will never choose to help either side unless they have absolute certainty in making a choice. Although the Great Xia Empire is quite powerful. However, this time the Great Xia Empire will be facing the top experts from the Heavenly God Academy and the Forbidden Zone. Under such circumstances, these holy sites would naturally not be chosen. Only the Xianyuan family and the Batian Pavilion would choose to help the Great Xia Empire. The Xianyuan family chose to help the Great Xia Empire mainly because they wanted to see if Chu Fan of the Great Xia Empire could bring back their Xianyuan family's ancestor, the human emperor. As for the Batian Pavilion, it's because the Batian Pavilion and the Forbidden Area are mortal enemies. Moreover, the Heaven-Mending Pavilion could not possibly stand by and watch this universe descend into chaos. Therefore, they naturally chose to help Chu Fan, the possessor of the destiny of the human emperor. In this way, it will be much easier for them to deal with any future dark disturbances that may arise in the Forbidden Zones. This is also why the Heaven-Mending Pavilion chose to help Chu Fan, while everyone was watching Chu Fan's battle. Meanwhile, the great battle between Chu Fan and the reflection of the Xianyuan Emperor in the Thunder World continued unabated. Both of them were wearing golden battle armor. Of course, the golden armor of the Yellow Emperor looks even more ancient. The Emperor's armor that Chu Fan wore looked even more majestic. The battle between the two continued in the air. More importantly, the strength that the 2 of them are currently displaying has far exceeded that of ordinary Emperor-level powerhouses. Chu Fan showed no mercy at this moment and threw a punch directly at the Xianyuan Emperor in front of him. This punch carried the terrifying power of the human emperor. It also carries a terrifying power. It's as if it can connect the entire universe. Upon seeing this, the the Yellow Emperor also extended his left hand. Then he threw a punch, and the surrounding lightning laws and human emperor laws instantly enveloped his entire body. Then, those two terrifying laws, carrying his fierce fist, collided directly with Chu Fan's fist. Their fists collided directly. The moment they collided, both of them were sent flying backwards again. Chapter 669, Chu Fan reveals the laws of the void, the terrifying phantom of the Xianyuan human emperor. At the same time, it can be seen that Chu Fan is also carrying a bit of lightning aura. Because of his constant battles with the Yellow Emperor, his body was now filled with the aura of lightning. Even so, Chu Fan has not yet defeated the Xianyuan Emperor in front of him. As for the Yellow Emperor in front of him, he stood there like an emotionless machine. He looked at Chu Fan with a completely emotionless expression. Is this the former fighting power of the Yellow Emperor? As expected of a peerless genius who appears only once every 10 million years, he is indeed invincible among those of the same realm. However, he can only be defeated in front of me. Chu Fan looked at the emotionless Emperor Xianyuan in front of him with a firm belief in his eyes. Although the strength of the Xianyuan Emperor in front of us is indeed terrifying, it could even be said that, within the same realm, even the Sun Emperor summoned by Chu Fan might not be able to defeat the Xianyuan Emperor. However, Chu Fan had complete confidence in himself, but the Yellow Emperor before him showed no emotion whatsoever. He stood still, as if he were a war machine. Of course, this is because it is a phantom summoned by the heavenly Tao of the Xianyuan human royal family. Then, without the slightest hesitation, Chu Fan swung his right fist. The next second, a golden figure appeared behind him. More importantly, this golden figure is constantly growing larger. Soon a golden figure appeared behind him. It was as if a celestial emperor was standing behind him. More importantly, this golden Dharma image is now extending its enormous right hand. Then, carrying terrifying power, it charged directly at the Yellow Emperor in front of it. The next second, the golden fist pierced through the purple lightning and hurtled towards the direction of Emperor Xianyuan. Thunder was like a thin sheet of paper to him, easily shattered. Even as these bolts of lightning continued to block the fist, they could not truly stop it, because the true, domineering power emanates directly from this golden Dharma form. And at this moment, the Xianyuan Emperor in front of Chu Fan finally made a move. He gripped the Xianyuan sword tightly in both hands. The next second, his entire body instantly transformed into a golden streak of light. The golden light was also enveloped by numerous purple lightning bolts. At the same time, a giant sword that could cleave the entire sky suddenly appeared in the sky. The giant sword fell directly towards Chu Fan. Then, the two terrifying forces collided instantly. The entire space shook violently at the moment of impact. It could even be said that two terrifying golden lights appeared in the very center of the entire thunder, and the light was constantly spreading outwards. Even the lightning bolts descended from the heavens had difficulty stopping the spread of these two golden rays. Therefore, many cultivators outside also saw two golden rays of light emanating from this thundercloud. The two golden beams of light were like two sharp blades, completely slicing through the lightning. However, a terrifying aura soon reappeared in the sky during the tribulation of lightning. The next second, an even more surging thunderbolt instantly enveloped the area once again. Then, the two golden lights disappeared completely at that moment. No one knew what had happened inside. However, they could sense that an epic battle was about to unfold. Even powerful beings, at the Emperor level, might not be able to survive inside. As for Chu Fan inside, he looked at the Xianyuan Emperor in front of him with some surprise, because he did not expect the Xianyuan Emperor's strength to be so terrifying. Of course, Chu Fan also wondered at this time whether the strength of the Xianyuan Emperor was blessed by the heavenly Tao. Otherwise, how could the strength of the Xianyuan Emperor be so great? However, no matter how powerful the Yellow Emperor is, Chu Fan will not admit defeat. His right hand was slightly open. The next second, he shot straight into the sky. At the same time, his golden palm instantly filled the entire sky. Then the terrifying palm crushed down directly towards the direction of the Yellow Emperor. This is the Void Emperor's ultimate technique, the Void Great Handprint. Chu Fan learned this move from the Void Emperor some time ago. It can be said that the power emanating from this move is indeed quite impressive. Moreover, with the blessing of his human emperor law, the power of this move far exceeds that of the Void Emperor at the same realm. More importantly, Chu Fan has already comprehended a wisp of the Void Law. Therefore, this palm strike contains both the laws of human life and the laws of emptiness. The terrifying power rushed directly towards the Yellow Emperor in front of him. Upon seeing this, the Yellow Emperor quickly took a step back. However, he was soon seen hunched over. Then he unleashed a deadly punch. The terrifying laws of the human emperor and the laws of thunder directly attacked the giant handprint in the sky. The two terrifying forces collided again in the next second. The four laws then continued to intertwine. These four laws are constantly clashing at this moment. A terrifying force continues to linger in the sky. Both Chu Fan and Emperor Xianyuan looked at each other with shock in their eyes. This was the first time Chu Fan had seen any other emotion in the eyes of the Xianyuan emperor. It should be noted that at the beginning of the great battle, Emperor Xianyuan had no expression on his face, just like a war machine. At this moment, Chu Fan even suspected that the Xianyuan emperor was possessed by a ghost, as if the Xianyuan emperor's own consciousness had entered the phantom image of the Xianyuan emperor, summoned by the heavenly Tao. No matter how strong you are, I will teach you to crush me today. Although Chu Fan didn't know what had happened to the Xianyuan emperor, his face was filled with determination and seriousness. Then, his aura became extremely terrifying. The next second, the Golden Emperor's law on his body slowly turned into nothingness. More importantly, Chu Fan seemed to exist in this world at this moment. Then he gently snapped his fingers. The next second, Chu Fan's entire body turned into wisps of nothingness and disappeared from this world. Even the Yellow Emperor, who was standing right in front of him, did not notice him at this moment. Meanwhile, the surrounding lightning continued to spread in all directions. Clearly, these lightning bolts were searching for Chu Fan. But how could Chu Fan, in his current state, possibly be found by these lightning bolts? Chapter 6, 70 Tribulation in Progress. The Void Emperor slays the Supreme Being. Unable to find Chu Fan, the lightning bolts began to rage. Even their bodies exuded a terrifying and ferocious aura at this moment. Of course, no matter how fierce the thunder was, Chu Fan's figure never appeared in the midst of it. Even the Xianyuan Emperor, who was formed from the lightning tribulation within the thunder, still had a sharp look in his eyes as he scanned the surroundings. Clearly, he was also searching for Chu Fan's direction at this moment. Just as the surrounding thunder was raging, at this moment, the sense of touch in the void also turned its gaze toward this thunder, Xianyuan human emperor. The terrifying lightning laws and human emperor laws on Xianyuan Linghuang's body were also constantly surging at this time. These two terrifying laws are even constantly intersecting. Chu Fan did not hesitate at all when he saw this scene. The emperor's sword in his hand emanated a terrifying emperor's law. Then he transformed into a streak of light and charged towards the direction of the thunder emperor Xianyuan. A terrifying force instantly descended upon the Xianyuan emperor. However, just a second before this terrifying power struck the Emperor Xianyuan, he naturally noticed this scene. So he emanated a terrifying aura and dodged the attack. However, it is clear that the aura emanating from the Yellow Emperor at this time is also extremely terrifying. He was sent flying backwards. Chu Fan, however, was relentless and continued to charge forward with the human Emperor's sword in hand. Clearly, he needs to quickly deal with Thunder Emperor Xianyuan today. Only in this way can we quickly overcome this tribulation of the human emperor. At this moment, Thunder Emperor Xianyuan clearly did not expect that Chu Fan would continue to attack him relentlessly. Then, a terrifying aura emanated from him. Instantly, a golden light appeared in his hand, carrying a purple aura. The next second, this terrifying attack came straight towards Chu Fan. Chu Fan, seeing this, did not show any weakness. Instead, he launched an attack directly with his longsword. He transformed into a streak of sword light and charged towards the direction of the Yellow Emperor. The two terrifying attacks collided instantly. The moment these two terrifying attacks collided, the entire sky was trembling violently. Even the thunder world they inhabited began to tremble violently. It was as if even the world of thunder couldn't withstand their battle. The terrifying power of the lightning struck Chu Fan instantly. Instantly, his emperor armor dimmed. Even so, the attack failed to break through the defenses of his emperor armor. He still has no injuries. However, the emperor's armor looked somewhat dull. Of course, Chu Fan's attack also landed on Emperor Xianyuan. It was observed that the Yellow Emperor's body was mixed with the Emperor's law and the Void Law, which did not belong to him. Two terrifying laws seemed intent on tearing the Yellow Emperor apart completely. Therefore, neither of them gained the upper hand in this attack. You could even say that the two were evenly matched this year. At the same time, Chu Fan transformed into a streak of light once again, charging towards the direction of the Xianyuan Emperor. More importantly, a huge Dharma image appeared behind him. Fa Xiang held a giant sword in his hand that could cleave the entire world in two. This giant golden sword cleaved down directly from the sky. Upon seeing this scene, a thunderous Dharma image instantly appeared behind the Yellow Emperor. At the same time, this thunderous Dharma image was also holding a long sword. This long sword exudes a terrifying aura of lightning. At the same time, Emperor Xianyuan also slashed his sword directly towards Chu Fan. A terrifying power instantly swept across the entire world. It could even be said that this terrifying power permeates the entire world. The two terrifying attacks collided instantly. This caused the entire Thunder World to begin shaking violently. Chu Fan, however, looked at the Xianyuan Emperor with a sharp gaze. The two then continued their fierce battle. This caused the entire little world to shake violently. While Chu Fan and the Yellow Emperor were locked in a fierce battle, a tremendous change was taking place above them, especially the great battle on the side of the Void Emperor. Although the supreme beings before him had already reached the pinnacle of their power. However, the Void Emperor is an existence that has reached the perfect realm of the Emperor. More importantly, his own strength has far exceeded his cultivation level. Therefore, he seemed quite relaxed when facing the Supreme Void Emperor, who had reached the pinnacle of spiritual attainment. Moreover, black blood was constantly oozing from the body of a Supreme Being opposite him. The other Supreme Being, on the other hand, was left with only one arm. All other parts of his body were completely shattered by the Void Emperor. And at this moment, the arm also began to slowly escape. Although the speed of the Supreme level is extremely fast, but how could he possibly escape from the battlefield of the Void Emperor? Moreover, the Void Emperor's strength was already an extremely terrifying existence. The soul attached to this arm was trying to escape. However, the terrifying aura emanating from the Void Emperor prevented this arm from escaping. In the end, only a scream was heard. Then, that arm was completely obliterated by the terrifying void laws of the Void Emperor, disappearing into the world. Instead, the sky was filled with stars. Thus, a supreme-level expert perished completely. And so this supreme being within the Forbidden Zone fell so easily at the hands of the Void Emperor. After this supreme being from the Forbidden Zone fell at the hands of the Void Emperor, a blood-red rain also fell from the sky. The top experts from the Holy Lands below were also shocked when they saw this scene, because they did not expect that the battle would only last for a short while, and that a top Emperor-level expert from the Great Xia Empire would kill a supreme being from Forbidden Zone. More importantly, this supreme being in the restricted area chose to reach the ultimate level of sublimation. But even so, he couldn't save his life. This shows just how terrifying the Void Emperor's power truly is. Those cultivators who hadn't witnessed the scene in the sky immediately understood upon seeing the blood rain falling from the heavens that a powerful figure at the Great Emperor level had fallen. Even if it wasn't a powerful figure at the Emperor level who perished, it was still someone who had achieved an alternative path to enlightenment or supreme level who perished. The cultivators who had thought of this all raised their heads and looked up at the sky. At this moment, they were also very curious as to whether it was the supreme being in the Forbidden Zone who had fallen, or the top expert of the Great Xia Empire who had fallen. However, what they were really hoping for was the fall of the supreme being within the Forbidden Zone. After all, only in this way can they feel more at ease. Chapter 671, The Terrifying Strength of the Void Emperor, and the Plans of the Two Supreme Beings of the Forbidden Zones. However, among these cultivators, some had reached the Great Sage Realm, so they could naturally sense that the one who had fallen in the sky this time was a supreme-level expert. In other words, the one who fell this time was the supreme being within the Forbidden Zone. These great sage-level experts, upon realizing this, revealed a look of ecstatic joy in their eyes. After all, from the very beginning of this great war, they all hoped that the Great Xia Empire would achieve final victory. After all, if the Great Xia Empire really lost to the supreme being within the Forbidden Zone, what awaits the entire universe is for these supreme beings within the Forbidden Zones to reap their life force. At that time, they will be like lambs to the slaughter. Therefore, from the very beginning, they expected the Great Xia Empire to be the victor in this great war. Of course, the expectations of those beings in those holy lands are not like those of these rogue cultivators. Because the top experts in Holy Land 3 knew that whoever won this great battle would benefit them. Even if the victor of this great battle is a supreme being within the Forbidden Zone, these top experts from the Holy Lands can still wield extreme earth weapons and directly charge out to kill these supreme beings within the Forbidden Zone. After all, if the supreme being in the Forbidden Zone wanted to defeat the top experts of the Great Xia Empire, then the supreme being in the Forbidden Zone would definitely be seriously injured. How could they possibly be a match for the top experts in the Holy Land who wield supreme imperial weapons at that time? Therefore, the thoughts and the minds of the Holy Land and these independent practitioners are different. Regardless of who ultimately wins, they are not too disappointed. Of course, it would be even more favorable for them if the Great Xia Empire were to achieve final victory. After all, this way they wouldn't have to use their ultimate imperial weapons. After a few moments, all living beings in the universe finally came to their senses. Then they gazed leisurely at the sky. At this moment, they were still hoping that the Supreme Being in the Forbidden Zone would fall again. After all, a Supreme Being from the Forbidden Zone has already fallen this time. Wouldn't it be even more beneficial for them if a Supreme Being from a Forbidden Zone were to fall? Thinking of this, they looked up at the sky with great anticipation. Meanwhile, the battle in the sky was also extremely fierce. Especially on the Void Emperor's side, the two remaining Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zones in front of him were looking at the Void Emperor with fear in their eyes. Because at this moment, the two remaining Supreme Beings in the Forbidden Zone discovered that the Void Emperor's strength far exceeded their expectations. More importantly, although these two Supreme Beings in the Forbidden Zones have chosen to reach the pinnacle of sublimation, their auras now feel far inferior to those of the Void Emperor. More importantly, they also had very serious injuries. One of the Supreme Beings had a scar the size of a fist on his chest. More importantly, this fist-sized wound was a huge blood hole. It pierced his heart completely. If he weren't a Supreme-level powerhouse, he would probably have perished by now. After all, the heart of this Supreme Being in the Forbidden Zone has now been completely obliterated by the Void Emperor. So it's already quite remarkable that he was able to survive thanks to his strong vitality. Meanwhile, the Supreme Being in the Forbidden Zone beside him was constantly bleeding. A terrifying power was constantly emanating from him. At the same time, one void law after another bound him up like chains. This prevented his entire body's energy from truly circulating. Therefore, it is clear that the two top rulers in the Dark Forbidden Zone are now at a disadvantage. Moreover, even the three Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zones who joined forces just now couldn't defeat the Void Emperor, let alone now that there are only two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zones. Moreover, these were two Dark Sovereigns from the Dark Forbidden Zone who were both severely injured. But how could they possibly escape the pursuit of the Void Emperor now? Because the Void Emperor has now placed the entire world within his own domain. The Void laws surrounding him were also constantly attacking these two powerful figures in the Forbidden Zone. Bound by these Void laws, these two Dark Sovereigns within the Forbidden Zones naturally could not escape the gaze of the Void Emperor. It could even be said that these two Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone are now fully aware of every step the Void Emperor takes. Even with the power of the Void laws, the Void Emperor knew where the two Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zones would go next. Therefore, the only fate awaiting these two Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone is death. These two Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone had no choice but to die. Therefore, the eyes of these two Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone also carried a hint of anger. They never imagined that one day they would perish at the hands of a great emperor. Even the Supreme Being within the Dark Forbidden Zone knows he cannot escape. Then, the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone, whose heart had been obliterated, looked at the Void Emperor with a mad glint in his eyes. Finally, he transformed into a beam of light and charged towards the Void Emperor. At the same time, he exuded an aura of destruction. A terrifying power instantly filled the entire sky. Moreover, the terrifying power within his body seemed about to erupt completely. Logically speaking, a Supreme Being within a Forbidden Zone shouldn't be able to unleash their full power so easily. After all, the Supreme Beings in these Forbidden Zones are all extremely protective of their lives. But if he doesn't choose to perish together with the Void Emperor now, therefore, he could only be annihilated by the Void Emperor in the end. That's why this Supreme Being chose to fight the Void Emperor to the death. He even now intends to perish together with the Void Emperor, trading one for one. Upon seeing the actions of the other Supreme Being within the restricted area, he instantly understood the Supreme Being's plan. Then, a black aura began to emanate from his body, breaking the Void laws binding him. Of course, at this moment, although he was constantly trying to break through the Void laws binding him, however, he transformed into a streak of light and headed towards the Void Emperor. Clearly, he also wanted to use his formidable strength to wear down this Void Emperor. Of course, the most important thing is that he also wants to do the same as the Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone, intending to trade one for one with the Void Emperor. After all, he is now unable to escape the Void Emperor's attack. Therefore, the best approach is to trade one for one with the Void Emperor. Two terrifying auras then charge directly toward the Void Emperor. Chapter 672, The Void Emperor Kills Another Supreme Being, The Madness of the Last Supreme Being. When the Void Emperor saw the aura emanating from the two Supreme Beings of the Imperial Guard in front of him, he instantly knew what these two were planning. In an instant, he summoned the Void Mirror above his head. At the same time, he summoned the terrifying power within him directly into the Void Mirror. The next second, a man dressed in a long robe appeared instantly in the Void Mirror. More importantly, the man exuded a terrifying aura. Moreover, the man's appearance was identical to that of the Void Emperor. In other words, this time the Void Emperor summoned his clone using the Void Mirror. Moreover, this clone of his is quite powerful. This clone is composed of the laws of the Void. Therefore, if the two supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone were to fight this clone, they would be unable to injure it at all, unless their strength far exceeds that of this clone. Otherwise, as long as the power of the Void Emperor is strong enough, this clone will never perish. This is the abnormal aspect of the Void Law. The moment this clone appeared, a terrifying aura emanated from the sky. At the same time, a smile appeared on the face of the Void Emperor. The next second, the aura of the Void Laws emanating from him became even stronger. He then charged directly at the two supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him. Of course, the clone in front of him directly withstood the powerful attacks of the two supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone. The two supreme beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone turned grim upon seeing this scene, because they never expected such a thing to happen. At the same time, they did not expect that the Void Emperor had such a terrifying trump card. But it's too late for them to regret it now, because the Void Emperor is now heading in their direction. Moreover, the Void Laws in the sky completely bound the two of them within them. Even these Void Laws were constantly emanating an aura of destruction, hurtling towards the two of them. Upon witnessing this, the two did not hesitate and fled into the distance. It was as if this time they wanted to completely escape the Void Emperor's attack. However, the terrifying Void Laws binding them made it as if they were stuck in a quagmire, unable to break free. Even now, it seems as if the two of them are firmly imprisoned by a giant hand. The next second, the Void Emperor appeared in front of them. Moreover, the terrifying aura emanating from the Void Emperor was so oppressive that the two of them couldn't even lift their heads. Then, the Void Emperor's fist landed directly on one of them in the chest. The terrifying power sent one of the supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone flying. Meanwhile, another terrifying Void Law directly struck a Dark Sovereign within a Dark Forbidden Zone. In an instant, the terrifying power emanating from the Dark Sovereign who had entered the darkness vanished completely. At the same time, he seemed to be bearing the pressure of the entire sky. Then all the bones in his body started to crack. The next second, the head of this supreme being in the Dark Forbidden Zone exploded instantly. This caused his entire being to instantly appear before everyone. More importantly, the terrifying aura emanating from him was completely extinguished. It was as if he had never existed in this universe. Of course, only the body of this supreme being within the Forbidden Zone was obliterated. As for his physical presence, he appeared on the battlefield as a spirit. But he is not far from his demise now. After all, he is currently just a divine soul, although he is said to be the soul of a supreme-level powerhouse. However, such a soul could be easily obliterated by the Void Emperor. The Void Emperor casually extended his right hand. The terrifying power went directly towards the soul of this supreme-level expert. The next second, a Void Law instantly bound the soul of this supreme-level expert. The terrifying power completely obliterated the soul of this supreme-level expert. Then another terrifying rain of blood appeared in the sky. This shows that yet another being who reached the supreme realm or even achieved enlightenment through unconventional means has fallen. Of course, it is possible that a powerful figure at the level of an emperor has fallen. However, many people speculate that the one who fell this time was a supreme-level powerhouse. After all, a supreme-level expert had just fallen. The top quasi-emperors in those holy lands were also instantly stunned, because they hadn't expected that the Void Emperor of the Great Xia Empire would possess such terrifying strength. He actually managed to completely annihilate two supreme beings simply by virtue of his terrifying strength. Keep in mind that only a few days have passed since the start of the Great Battle. In just a few days, the Void Emperor annihilated one supreme being after another. This moment left the powerful figures in these holy lands in disbelief. Of course, the Void Emperor showed no expression on his face as he watched all of this, because at this moment, he was heading towards the last supreme being in the Forbidden Zone. Of course, this was the last supreme being he faced on the battlefield. As for the number of supreme beings in the Forbidden Zones of other battlefields, there are naturally quite a few. Moreover, apart from the Void Emperor, none of those present were able to kill the supreme being who entered the inner realm, even though the Sun Emperor's side has the upper hand. However, he still hasn't managed to kill any of the three supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him. Therefore, the only one in the entire universe who has killed a supreme being is the Void Emperor, a top-tier emperor-level powerhouse. At this moment, when the remaining supreme being saw the Void Emperor approaching him, he understood that he could only perish here today, no matter what. Then his body began to swell instantly. A terrifying power instantly emanated from his body. His face was filled with a resolute expression. Since we're all going to die anyway, then you might as well come with me. Then, the Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone looked in the direction of the Void Emperor with a very abnormal and satisfied expression and spoke. At the same time, a huge fluctuation was also generated around him. A terrifying power instantly emanated from his body. More importantly, the terrifying force around him was constantly heading towards his chest. This made him feel like an inflating balloon. Clearly, this Supreme Being in the Forbidden Zone intends to eliminate the Void Emperor by self-destruction. Perhaps only in this way can he take the Void Emperor away. Chapter 673, The Might of the Void Emperor. The Heaven-Mending Pavilion's alternative path to enlightenment joins the battle. The Void Emperor, however, showed no expression on his face upon witnessing this scene. He looked at the Supreme Ruler of the Forbidden Zone as if he were watching a clown. Do you have the ability to self-destruct in front of me? Then, the Void Emperor looked calmly at the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone before him. Then, he suddenly attacked the Supreme Being within the Dark Forbidden Zone. A terrifying power instantly emanated from his body. More importantly, this terrifying power transformed into chains of void, completely imprisoning the Supreme Being within the Dark Forbidden Zone. At the same time, the terrifying power also completely obliterated the Supreme Being within the Dark Forbidden Zone, which was about to self-destruct. If this Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone had continued his battle with the Void Emperor, if the Void Emperor wants to eliminate him, it will probably take some time. After all, eliminating a Supreme Being in a restricted area is not as simple as it seems. However, by choosing to self-destruct, the terrifying power within his body was naturally utilized by the Void Emperor. Thus, the Void Emperor so easily killed another Emperor from the Forbidden Zone. This resulted in another shower of blood rain falling from the sky. This means that a Supreme Being in the Forbidden Zone has fallen once again. Those top experts from the Holy Land who hadn't yet recovered from their shock were now even more stunned, because they hadn't expected the Void Emperor of the Great Xia Empire to be so terrifyingly powerful. They actually wiped out 3 Supreme Beings in the Forbidden Zone in a short period of time. Of course, the Void Emperor neither sought to understand nor intended to concern himself with their thoughts regarding all of this. After annihilating these 3 Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone, he leisurely turned his gaze to other directions. At this moment, he naturally turned his gaze to the Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone in other directions where a great battle was taking place. He merely glanced in the direction of the Sun Emperor. The Void Emperor then chose to go directly to the direction of the unorthodox Dao Achievers to help them stop the Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone. The Void Emperor has discovered that several of the Xianyuan family's unconventional Dao-attaining experts are on the verge of collapse. Although the strength of the few unconventional Dao-achieving experts from the Xianyuan family is not weak. However, it would still be quite difficult to face the true Supreme Being within the Dark Forbidden Zone. Therefore, they're starting to find it difficult to keep going. Therefore, the Void Emperor decided to directly help these few members of the Xianyuan family achieve their Dao through unconventional means. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at the battlefield of the Xianyuan family's alternative path to enlightenment. At this moment, several unconventional experts from the Xianyuan family who had achieved enlightenment also bore terrible scars. One of them had his arm severed by the Supreme Being who entered the room. Moreover, there was a terrifying law constantly preventing his arm from recovering. After the Void Emperor arrived, he immediately unleashed a terrifying power, moving the 3 unorthodox Dao-attaining experts from the Xianyuan family to the back. He stood directly in front of the 3 Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone. At the same time, the power of the Void laws emanating from a Void Emperor completely obliterated the terrifying injuries on the 3 members of the Xianyuan family who had achieved enlightenment through unconventional means. Then, with a calm look in his eyes, he looked at the 3 Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him. Go down to heal your wounds, or go help on other battlefields. And then the voice of the Void Emperor slowly drifted out. Of course, he was referring to the 3 unconventional experts from the Xianyuan family who had achieved enlightenment. Upon hearing the words of the Void Emperor, the 3 unconventional Dao-achieving experts from the Xianyuan family respectfully bowed to him. They then headed directly to other battlefields, although their injuries are quite severe. But now they're even more eager to quickly kill the Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone. Moreover, the terrifying power of the Void Emperor's laws had completely dispelled the force that was preventing them from recovering. Therefore, it is naturally very easy for them to recover from their injuries now. Even the unorthodox Daoist expert from the Xianyuan family, who had lost an arm, slowly stepped out at this moment. Meanwhile, his arm is also slowly recovering. Then, these few unconventional cultivators from the Xianyuan family directly joined other battlefields. The otherworldly experts from the Heaven-Mending Pavilion who were guarding Chu Fan below frowned upon seeing this scene. However, they soon chose to head directly towards the battlefield, since Chu Fan no longer needs them. So there's not much point in them staying here. It would be better to join this great battle and continue to slay these supreme beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone. Thus, with the addition of 3 unconventional Dao-achieving experts from the Xinyuan family and the Butian Pavilion, the battlefield of unconventional Dao-achieving individuals, which was originally in a state of balance, was disrupted. They instantly sided with the Xinyuan family of the Great Xia Empire. The 3 supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zones, standing before the Void Emperor, looked at him with a hint of anger in their eyes. Of course, besides a hint of anger, their eyes also carried a sense of worry and solemnity, because they all knew that the Void Emperor had just killed 3 supreme-level powerhouses from the Forbidden Zones. The supreme-level powerhouses within these Forbidden Zones possess strengths similar to theirs. Therefore, it is now difficult for them to defeat the Void Emperor. Even the supreme beings within these Forbidden Zones felt they could not defeat the Void Emperor. Therefore, the supreme beings in these Forbidden Zones also looked at the Void Emperor in front of them with a hint of worry in their eyes. But the Void Emperor in front of them had no intention of giving them time to react. He then slapped his palm directly into the sky. A terrifying void handprint fell directly from the sky. The powerful force directly attacked the 3 supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of them. Upon witnessing this terrifying power, the 3 supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone instantly became solemn. At the same time, they instantly understood why those 3 supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone had perished even after reaching the pinnacle of their power. Because the Void Emperor's strength was indeed far beyond their imagination. So the 3 of them joined forces and unleashed a terrifying attack into the sky. They wanted to use this terrifying attack to neutralize the attack from the Void Emperor in the sky. Of course, they succeeded at that point. Chapter 674, The Sun Emperor Unleashes His Power, the Origin of the Supreme Being. After all, the Void Emperor did not unleash his true power this time. He simply wanted to completely draw these 3 supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone into his great battle. So now he has achieved his goal. They successfully drew these 3 supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone into their own battlefield. Then the Void Emperor engaged in a fierce battle with these 3 supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone. A terrifying power instantly filled the entire sky. The aura emanating from the Void Emperor was also extremely terrifying. Of course, the auras emanating from the 3 supreme beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone opposite him were also quite strong. After all, they haven't suffered any serious injuries yet, even after the battle so far. While the Void Emperor was engaged in a fierce battle with the 3 supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone, the battle on the Sun Emperor's side was also extremely intense. The Sun Emperor looked at the 3 supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone before him with a hint of fighting spirit on his face. Of course, the most important thing is that the 3 supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zones in front of the Sun Emperor all bear terrifying injuries. I didn't expect that guy Void to have dealt with the 3 supreme beings in front of him so quickly. In that case, I'll have to deal with you guys quickly too. Then the Sun Emperor raised his head and looked at the supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him and spoke. After he finished speaking, an aura as bright as the sun instantly appeared around him. He stood between heaven and earth like a sun. At the same time, a sun instantly appeared behind him. The terrifying laws of the sun erupted completely around this sun. The Sun Emperor, carrying terrifying power, charged towards the 3 supreme beings of the Dark Forbidden Zone before him. A terrifying force instantly surged towards the 3 supreme beings within the Dark Forbidden Zone. When these 3 powerful figures from the Dark Forbidden Zone sensed the killing intent emanating from the Sun Emperor, an angry expression instantly appeared on their faces, because they did not expect that the Sun Emperor would take them so lightly. They want to get rid of them quickly now. Upon realizing this, the 3 beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone also emanated terrifying power as they charged towards the Sun Emperor. Then, the 2 terrifying forces collided directly. After these 2 terrifying forces collided, the entire sky was completely dyed in 2 colors. Golden light shone down on the entire earth. The black light was slowly and completely eroded away by the golden radiance. Most importantly, the aura emanating from the 3 dark sovereigns before the Sun Emperor began to gradually weaken. It was as if the Sun Emperor's attack had completely annihilated them. Of course, the current Sun Emperor has not yet killed these 3 supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone. After all, killing a supreme being from the Dark Forbidden Zone is not as simple as it seems. Then this terrifying power instantly obliterated the surrounding laws. The sun behind the Sun Emperor fell directly toward the supreme being in a Dark Forbidden Zone. The Supreme Being within the Dark Forbidden Zone stared in horror at the sun in the sky upon witnessing this scene. Then, a terrifying power erupted from his body, attempting to stop the sun. However, even if he were to unleash terrifying power within his body now, how could he possibly stop this sun? A scream echoed across the entire sky. Then, the Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone was completely annihilated by this round of the sun. Even the Divine Soul appears so insignificant before this sun. The terrifying power of the Crimson Sun instantly obliterated the Supreme Being within this Forbidden Zone. At the same time, the laws of the sun are constantly surrounding the other two Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone. After the fall of this Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone, another shower of blood appeared in the sky. All the cultivators in the entire universe looked up at the sky with disbelief in their eyes. Since the start of the Great Battle, for top experts have already fallen. Such a thing has never happened, even in ancient times. Of course, the ancient period here refers to the dark and turbulent era that once occurred. During that period, several extraordinary individuals who had achieved the Tao emerged to resist the Supreme Beings within the Dark Forbidden Zone. However, in the end, two speakers who attained enlightenment through unconventional means and one Supreme Being perished. However, their combined numbers are still less than the number of Supreme Beings currently in the fallen Dark Forbidden Zone. Therefore, the fall of the Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone is something they find unbelievable. Even the top experts in those holy lands looked up at the sky with fear in their eyes. At this moment, they finally understood just how terrifying the strength of the Great Xia Empire truly was. The sheer power of the Void Emperor and the Sun Emperor alone made it impossible for them to underestimate the strength of the Great Xia Empire. And the Sun Emperor, of course, did not hesitate at all at this point. Instead, they directly attacked the other Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zones in front of them. The Supreme Being within the Dark Forbidden Zone was utterly enraged upon discovering this scene. Suddenly, a terrifying power emanated from the two Supreme Beings of the Dark Forbidden Zone. Meanwhile, in the distant Forbidden Zone, a terrifying power was constantly emanating. Then, two terrifying beams of light flew out directly from the distant Forbidden Zone. The next second, two terrifying forces were instantly injected into the bodies of the two Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone. Subsequently, the strength of these two Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone was greatly enhanced. You forced us to this day, and you will die today. Then, a Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone looked at the Sun Emperor with anger in his eyes and said, however, at this point, he certainly had the right to say such things, because the aura emanating from him now far surpasses what it was at the beginning. It turns out that these two Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone are different from the Supreme Beings in the other Dark Forbidden Zones. They chose to sever a part of their essence and bury it in the Dark Forbidden Zone. Then use this method to continuously improve your life. I never expected that today, under the coercion of the Sun Emperor, I would have to take out my essence. After their essence merged into their bodies, their strength was greatly enhanced. Moreover, they buried their origins in Forbidden Zones, so even after they reached the pinnacle of their abilities, it didn't cause much of a problem. If they perish, these primal sources will become food for the other Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone. As selfish Forbidden Zones, how could the Supreme Beings possibly do such a noble thing? Chapter 675, True Dragon Treasure Technique. True Dragon Fist, the Emperor's formidable strength. The Sun Emperor was somewhat surprised to see this. He hadn't expected that the strength of the two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him could actually be enhanced. Even so, the current Sun Emperor did not show much worry on his face. Instead, an even stronger fighting spirit emerged. Then he charged directly at the two Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone. The terrifying laws of the sun instantly emanated from his body. Of course, these solar laws also include many human laws. Therefore, the strength of the Sun Emperor far surpasses that of ordinary top experts. The two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zones standing before him unleashed their most terrifying combat power. Therefore, the battle between the Sun Emperor and the two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zones in front of him became extremely terrifying. It could even be said that the battle between the current Sun Emperor and these two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone has far surpassed the battles between ordinary Great Emperor-level experts. Of course, because these two Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone have regained their original essence, their strength is now no weaker than that of the Sun Emperor. In an instant, the great battle reached a stalemate. And, at the same time that the battle on the Sun Emperor's side also reached a stalemate. At this time, the Emperor's side also played a significant role. At this moment, the Emperor used his world book to pull the two supreme beings from the dark forbidden zones directly into his world. In this world, the Emperor is the ruler of this world. Now, with just a wave of his hand, he can unleash endless attacks on the two supreme beings from the dark forbidden zone in front of him. The two supreme beings within the dark forbidden zone looked on with anger and resentment, like emperors ruling the world. They hadn't expected that the emperor they were facing would be so difficult to deal with. You have to understand that they are, after all, supreme-level powerhouses within the forbidden zone. It was surprisingly difficult to deal with the emperor. You must know that the emperor's strength was merely achieved through an unorthodox path. However, no matter how angry they were, there was nothing they could do at that moment, because the supreme beings in these dark forbidden zones are now in the world of the emperor. Therefore, in this world, the emperor's power is the greatest. This is also the world that the emperor organized using his own world tree. The emperor's fist swung out rapidly. The next second, a terrifying attack shot directly at the two supreme beings in the dark forbidden zone in front of them. At the same time, he appeared directly beside the two supreme beings of the dark forbidden zone as if he had used a teleportation technique. The terrifying power struck the two supreme beings of the dark forbidden zone directly. Then this terrifying force directly blasted the two supreme beings from the dark forbidden zone away. Having completed all this, the emperor reappeared swiftly in this world once more. In an instant, his figure transformed into countless figures, charging towards the two supreme beings in the dark forbidden zone ahead. However, despite this, the emperor's attack has not completely killed the supreme beings in these dark forbidden zones, because the power of his attacks is far from enough to kill the supreme beings in these dark forbidden zones. Even so, these supreme beings from the dark forbidden zone were still directly blasted away by this terrifying power. One of the supreme beings in the dark forbidden zone even had a look of terror in his eyes. At the same time, he could feel the surrounding laws constantly repelling him. The power of the laws within his body was also slowly being depleted. Although the emperor could not kill all the supreme beings in these dark forbidden zones in the fastest time. However, the emperor is now using the rules of his own world to bind the laws of these two supreme beings. This caused the laws of these two supreme-level powerhouses to begin to weaken slowly. Once these two supreme-level powerhouses have used up all their laws, then death will be their next fate. These two supreme beings in the dark forbidden zone naturally guessed this as well. Therefore, neither of them used their own laws at this time. Instead, he used his physical strength to fight the emperor. The horrific war thus continued. Meanwhile, the emperor was constantly using the laws of heaven and earth around him to resist the attacks of the two supreme beings in front of him. Then, the emperor suddenly threw a punch forward. The speed of this punch far exceeded that of the initial battle. At the same time, after he threw this punch, a giant dragon instantly appeared behind him. This colossal dragon, carrying immense power, charged directly towards the two supreme beings from the dark forbidden zone ahead. The terrifying power collided directly with the two supreme beings from the dark forbidden zone in front of them. Then he directly blasted these two supreme beings from the dark forbidden zone away. At the same time, the terrifying power emanating from this giant dragon directly collided with the two supreme beings in the dark forbidden zone. This caused a huge dent to appear on the bodies of these two supreme beings from the dark forbidden zone. Even before the two of them could react, the emperor was forced to retreat once again. Then he threw another punch forward. A giant silver-white dragon reappeared and continued its attack on the two supreme beings from the dark forbidden zone. This time, the power of the silver-white dragon far exceeded that of the previous silver-white dragon. This is the Dragon Clan's true dragon treasure technique. It represents the limit of power. So when this silver-white dragon collided once again with the two supreme beings from the dark forbidden zone in front of it. The two supreme beings from the dark forbidden zone were instantly blasted away by this terrifying force. Then this terrifying power quickly collided with the two supreme beings of the dark forbidden zone. Of course, at this moment, they also spat out a mouthful of blood as they flew out. More importantly, the two of them are helpless even without using the laws of nature, because the power unleashed by the emperor is inherently a representation of the law of force. Therefore, it was not as simple as one might imagine for their physical strength to withstand the emperor's attack. Even the physical strength of one of the supreme beings was directly shattered by the terrifying power of the Son of Heaven. His body also directly transformed into fragments that appeared in this small world. However, the Dark Lord quickly used the remaining power of the laws within his body to reassemble his body. The other supreme being looked in the direction of the emperor with a solemn expression. Chapter 676 The Emperor slays the supreme being, the limit of power. It was only then that they realized they had underestimated this unconventional Taoist from the Great Xia Empire. At first, the two thought that as long as they didn't use the laws of this world, they could drag things out with the emperor until the end. However, they never expected that without using any laws, they would be brutally beaten by the emperor using his terrifying power. This caused the terrifying aura emanating from them to slowly dissipate. Even the two supreme beings in the dark forbidden zone at this moment fully understood that if they wanted to leave this world, they had to defeat the emperor in front of them. However, given their current strength, it's simply wishful thinking to think they could defeat the emperor before them, because the emperor's power was truly terrifying. The emperor, however, did not hesitate at all. He once again unleashed his most terrifying physical power, charging towards the supreme being whose physical body had just been reconstructed. The easiest person for him to deal with now is the supreme being in the dark forbidden zone, whose physical body has just been reconstructed. After all, the power of the laws within the body of this supreme being in the dark forbidden zone is now extremely weak. Dealing with this supreme being in the dark forbidden zone is naturally much easier than dealing with another dark supreme being. Therefore, at this moment, the Emperor's fist also directly attacked the supreme being in the dark forbidden zone. The supreme being within the dark forbidden zone naturally realized what was happening at that moment. However, no matter how fast he reacted, he could only helplessly deal with it at this moment. He even directly used the reorganized power laws within his entire body. After all, if he doesn't resist the Emperor now, his demise is inevitable. Therefore, he could only helplessly use all his strength to resist the Emperor's attack. Then the two engaged in another fierce battle. The Emperor was like a ferocious beast, constantly launching attacks on the supreme being in the dark forbidden zone before him. The supreme being from the dark forbidden zone in front of him was constantly fighting and retreating. Even at this moment, he was still thinking about how to escape the Emperor's attack. Upon seeing this, another supreme being from the dark forbidden zone quickly drew his weapon. Then, a long sword instantly appeared in his hand. The long sword emanated a black aura. Then, in an instant, the long sword in his hand transformed into a series of flying knives, hurtling towards the Emperor. The Emperor calmly shook his head upon seeing this scene. Then a silvery white light instantly appeared around him. The silvery white light quickly enveloped his entire body. This prevented the throwing knives from getting close to him. He was delivering powerful, impactful blows to the supreme being from the dark forbidden zone before him. Terrifying power relentlessly bombarded the supreme being of this dark forbidden zone. This caused numerous wounds to instantly appear on the body of the supreme being in the dark forbidden zone. Even now, the scars on his body are so severe that it's unbelievable. The green light emanating from his chest was slowly fading away. Even now, his life is slowly fading. At first, he was able to withstand the Emperor's attacks. However, as time went on, the Emperor's attacks became increasingly difficult for him to withstand. Even now, it is extremely difficult for him to withstand the Emperor's attack, because every punch from the Emperor represents the ultimate power. The terrifying force sent him flying. Then the Emperor directly stomped this supreme being from the dark forbidden zone under his feet. He glanced at the supreme being in the dark forbidden zone with a hint of disdain in his eyes. Then, a ball of silvery white flame instantly appeared in his hand. The next second, the ball of silvery white flame in his hand landed directly on the supreme being in the dark forbidden zone. The terrifying power instantly incinerated this supreme being from the dark forbidden zone. Even the supreme being within the dark forbidden zone was completely consumed by this terrifying flame before he could even roar. And after the fall of this supreme being in the dark forbidden zone, another supreme being from the dark forbidden zone looked at the Emperor with fear in his eyes. At that moment, he seemed to see his own fate. Then he was seen gripping the long knife tightly in both hands. Then he cleaved the entire world with a single strike. The terrifying power seemed poised to cleave the entire sky in two. But to his despair, this terrifying power failed to break free from the constraints of this world. It was as if a simple, ordinary slash had passed by. Upon seeing this, the Emperor swiftly charged towards the remaining members of the dark forbidden zone. At the same time, the terrifying power emanating from his body was also directly released, and the world tree in the Emperor's hands reappeared once again. At this point, the aura of the world's laws emanating from the world tree had become quite mature. Clearly, the world tree has fully matured under the Emperor's control. Then, the Emperor, wielding the world tree, launched an attack directly at the Dark Sovereign in the dark forbidden zone ahead. The world tree in his hand emitted multicolored world laws, attempting to trap this supreme being from the dark forbidden zone. Naturally, the Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone would not surrender without a fight upon witnessing this scene. In an instant, the long sword in his hand transformed into a black streak of light and charged towards the Emperor. At the same time, an ominous aura instantly appeared in the entire sky. The next second, a strange figure appeared beside the Emperor. This person is none other than the Dark Sovereign within the Dark Forbidden Zone. At this moment, the long sword in his hand went straight for the Emperor's face. However, just as the long sword in his hand was about to strike the Emperor's body also emitted many colorful lights. These multicolored lights quickly formed a multicolored constraint. Then, a series of colorful chains formed, completely controlling the long sword in front of the Emperor. The Emperor's lips curled into a smile, and I saw him clench his fist tightly. He threw a punch directly at the Dark Sovereign in front of him. A terrifying force instantly descended upon the long sword in the hand of the Dark Lord. The next second, this terrifying power flowed directly from his long sword into his body. Thus, the Dark Lord had no choice but to abandon the long sword in his hand. He was forced backward. The void behind him vanished instantly. The Dark Lord looked at the Emperor before him with disbelief in his eyes. Only then did he truly feel the power of this so-called limit of strength. Chapter 677, The Supreme Being Falls Again. Cultivators of the Central Region. Upon seeing this, the Emperor revealed a very strange smile. Then, he quickly threw down the long sword he was holding. Without the slightest hesitation, he directly wielded the world tree and charged towards the Dark Sovereign in front of him. The terrifying world laws emanating from him transformed into beams of multicolored light, trapping this Dark Sovereign. Upon seeing this, the Dark Lord's face showed a hint of anger. Then he quickly threw a punch forward. As he unleashed this punch, a giant black phoenix appeared behind him. This enormous black phoenix seemed capable of completely swallowing up the sky. A terrifying force swept across the entire world. Upon seeing this, the Emperor did not hesitate to throw a punch. The next second, a terrifying behemoth appeared behind the Emperor. If you watch the show closely, you'll find that this terrifying beast is actually a silver-white dragon. The silver-white dragon charged directly at the black phoenix in front of it. The two terrifying attacks collided instantly. At the instant these two terrifying attacks collided, both the black phoenix and the silver dragon vanished completely from this world. The Emperor himself had already appeared before this Dark Sovereign. His fist landed directly on the chest of the Dark Lord. The terrifying force struck the Dark Lord directly in the chest. In an instant, you could hear the sound of bones cracking. Then, cracks appeared one after another on the chest of the Dark Lord. As these cracks appeared, a look of pain crossed the face of the Dark Lord. Then, with extremely rapid speed, he transformed into a beam of light and vanished. However, the Emperor relentlessly followed this Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone as he charged forward. His terrifying power was relentlessly attacking the Supreme Being within the Dark Forbidden Zone. Judging from this situation, this Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone won't last long under the Emperor's control. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. This Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone fought the Emperor for less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn before being completely killed by the Emperor. Therefore, the two supreme-level powerhouses who fought against the Emperor also perished in this world. The Emperor then waved his hand, causing this world to disappear completely. Then he appeared in the outside world. As soon as the Emperor appeared in the outside world, a shower of blood rained down from the sky. This rain of blood appeared after the long-lost Supreme Beings fell. At that moment, the top experts in the Holy Land also turned their gazes toward the Emperor. Because the Emperor had just brought these two Supreme Beings into a small world, the top experts in these Holy Lands were unaware of the great battle between the Emperor and these two Supreme Beings. However, now that the Emperor has emerged, the two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone have not appeared, and this is in conjunction with the blood rain in the sky. The top experts in these Holy Lands instantly guessed what they were thinking. Then they saw a look of fear in their eyes as they stared in the direction of the Emperor. They hadn't expected that the Emperor could so easily kill those two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone. It should be noted that the Emperor's strength was not as great as that of Emperor Hengyu. Similarly, his strength is not as terrifying as that of the Void Emperor. Even so, he was able to easily kill two supreme-level powerhouses. This moment left the top experts in these Holy Lands in disbelief. Even the quasi-emperors in the Heaven-Mending Pavilion were looking at the sky with disbelief, because they hadn't expected that this unconventional expert from the Great Xia Empire would have reached such a level of strength. Although the strength of those who attained enlightenment through unconventional means is not significantly different from that of emperors. However, no matter what, there is still a certain gap between the strength of a powerful person who has achieved enlightenment through unconventional means and the strength of a powerful person at the level of an emperor. For example, it would be easy for a powerful being at the level of an emperor to defeat a powerful being who has achieved enlightenment through an unconventional method. The supreme-level powerhouse was originally a former emperor-level powerhouse. Therefore, it will be easy for them to defeat the powerful individuals who have achieved enlightenment through unconventional means. However, what they didn't expect was that a powerful figure who had achieved enlightenment through unconventional means had killed two supreme-level experts. This moment made them feel incredible. Of course, besides the Butian Pavilion, the one who would least like to see this scene is probably the Tiantian Academy. At this moment, the three remaining great emperor-level experts from the Heavenly God Academy stared at the sky in disbelief, because they hadn't expected the emperor's power to be so terrifying. They were able to kill two supreme-level experts so easily. This person's strength is truly terrifying. Although he hasn't broken through to the Great Emperor realm yet, his combat power is probably at least at the late stage of the Great Emperor realm. Then, the powerful expert at the late stage Great Emperor realm in the Heavenly God Academy sighed and said something. At the same time, his face was filled with shock and disbelief, because he hadn't expected the emperor's strength to reach such a terrifying level. At the same time, he did not expect that there would be such a terrifying, unconventional Dao attainment existence in the Great Xia Empire. With the fall of two more supreme-level experts, the supreme-level experts in the Forbidden Zone will probably not be able to withstand their attack. Meanwhile, another powerful figure at the late stage of the Great Emperor realm slowly stepped forward, looking at the great battle in the sky with concern. Although the Heavenly God Academy doesn't particularly favor the Forbidden Zone, it could even be said that the Heavenly God Academy was originally waiting for the Supreme Being in the Forbidden Zone and the Great Xia Empire to fight to the death. However, judging from the current situation, the top experts of the Great Xia Empire can deal with these Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone. After all, the number of these Supreme Beings who have fallen has now reached 6. This number far exceeds that of other times. Beside the two great emperors of the Heavenly God Academy, the mid-stage Great Emperor looked into the distance with a hint of worry in his eyes. At the same time, this worry was mixed with a hint of expectation. Now, their only hope lies in the combat power of those top-tier Emperor-level experts. These are the two great battles that disappeared into this universe. Only by clearly understanding the outcomes of those two major battles can we determine the outcome of this one. Chapter 678, The Continuous Battle, the Innate Dao Body in the Forbidden Zone. Of course, he quickly looked away again. The battle in the sky was proving to be a major headache for them. More importantly, the three great Emperor-level experts from the Heavenly God Academy dared not make a move. They fear that their intervention might have even more serious consequences. Therefore, they naturally did not choose to take action at this time. Instead, he looked at the people fighting in the sky with a worried expression. Meanwhile, the Emperor planned to join other battlefields. Of course, at this time, he did not join those who had achieved unorthodox enlightenment in the Great Battle. Instead, they turned their attention to a higher level. The battle taking place there is between the Great Accomplished Holy Body and the Great Accomplished Overlord Body. Facing them were 4 supreme beings. However, both the Great Accomplishment Overlord Body and the Great Accomplishment Holy Body have now begun to gain an absolute advantage. After all, both of them were already top tier in terms of strength. Therefore, the two of them naturally have the upper hand now. After glancing at the battle between the Great Accomplished Holy Body and the Great Accomplished Hegemonic Body, the Emperor withdrew his gaze, because he now finds that with a fully developed Holy Body or a fully developed Overlord Body, it will be much easier for him to defeat the enemy opposite him. On the contrary, it was Gai Jiuyo and his group who found it difficult to deal with their own enemies. Although Gai Jiuyo's strength had also reached the Quasi-Emperor Perfection realm. However, stopping a Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone is not so simple for him, because the Supreme Beings within the Dark Forbidden Zone can achieve the ultimate sublimation. Therefore, their strength naturally far surpasses that of ordinary, unorthodox, enlightened beings. Gai Jiuyo's current strength is only at the Quasi-Emperor Perfection level. Therefore, his desire for a major battle was not as simple as he imagined. However, he still appears calm and composed, because the Supreme Being in the Forbidden Zone before him had no intention of reaching the ultimate level of sublimation. Therefore, Gai Jiuyo was naturally able to withstand this Supreme Being within the Forbidden Zone. The Emperor decided to help Gai Jiuyo after only one glance. Then he transformed into a beam of light and headed towards Gai Jiuyo. In the blink of an eye, the Emperor arrived directly beside Gai Jiuyo. After nodding to Gai Jiuyo, the Emperor launched an attack directly on the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him. Upon discovering the Emperor appearing before him, the Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone instantly wore a solemn expression. After exchanging a single punch with the Emperor, this Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone fully understood the extent of the Emperor's strength before him. A look of resentment instantly appeared on his face. Then, a terrifying and overwhelming aura suddenly emanated from his body. As this extremely surging and terrifying aura emanated from the Supreme Being within the Dark Forbidden Zone, a dark aura appeared within the Forbidden Zone. More importantly, this dark aura is heading towards this Dark Sovereign. Then, this dark aura landed directly on the Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone. After this aura completely merged with the Supreme Being within the Dark Forbidden Zone, the power of this Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone has also been further enhanced. His entire face was filled with a greedy look as he gazed in the direction of the Emperor. To be precise, he was looking at the World Tree in the Emperor's hand. So you've also merged with your own origin, but you're still too weak in front of me. When the Emperor sensed that the Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone before him had undergone a tremendous improvement, a look of surprise appeared on his face. However, he quickly and resolutely attacked the Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him. The terrifying power descended directly upon this Supreme Being within the Dark Forbidden Zone. The two then engaged in an epic battle. After all, both the current Emperor and this Supreme Being in the Dark Forbidden Zone have reached the pinnacle of power, while the Emperor and the Supreme Ruler in the Dark Forbidden Zone were locked in a fierce battle. At this moment, the aura emanating from the Great Accomplished Holy Body and the Great Accomplished Overlord Body was also extremely fierce. More importantly, at this moment, the Great Accomplished Holy Body was standing on a golden road. His eyes flashed with a fierce light as he looked at the two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone ahead. A golden fist shot out directly from his hand. The golden light hurtled towards the two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone ahead. At the same time, a fist imprint carrying the aura of reincarnation directly attacked the two Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone. This is the Six Paths Reincarnation Fist, the ultimate fist technique of the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body. The terrifying fist imprint clashed directly with the two Supreme Beings before him. These two Supreme Beings were also suffering terribly from the beating, because at this point, they discovered that many fist marks had appeared on their bodies. Of course, the supreme imperial weapons in their hands were also constantly attacking the direction of the Great Accomplished Holy Body. Although the physical strength of the Great Accomplished Holy Body is extremely terrifying, however, he also had injuries on his body. Golden blood was continuously flowing from his body. Of course, the vital energy within this golden blood is also extremely terrifying. Even for a powerful expert at the Great Sage level, it would be very difficult to absorb all of this blood. This is the power of the blood of the Great Accomplished Holy Body. However, the power emanating from the Great Accomplished Sacred Body when using the Six Paths Reincarnation Fist is extremely strong. His fists relentlessly struck at the two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone before him. One terrifying force after another rained down on the two Supreme Beings of the Dark Forbidden Zone. Even if these two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone had bodies made of iron, they couldn't withstand such constant blows. Therefore, these two Supreme Beings in the Dark Forbidden Zone are constantly dodging the attacks of this Great Accomplished Holy Body. They have brought their movement skills to their absolute limit. Meanwhile, the battle between the Great Body Master and the Supreme Being in the Forbidden Zone was also extremely fierce. Because there are great similarities between the constitution of the Great Accomplishment Overlord Body and the Great Accomplishment Holy Body. The purple blood and purple aura of the Great Accomplishment Overlord Body also dyed the entire sky purple. More importantly, he is also a being who cultivates the laws of power. Therefore, the purple light emanating from the Great Accomplishment Overlord Body was continuously attacking the two Supreme Beings in front of it. More importantly, a terrifying power was constantly emerging behind him. One purple fist after another shot directly at the two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of them. What's most surprising is that one of these two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone exudes a terrifying aura. It was as if the laws around him were constantly revolving around him. Clearly, his physique is that of an innate Taoist body. Chapter 679, One Force Breaks All Laws. The chaotic ancient emperor with unparalleled power. At the same time, the terrifying laws surrounding him were constantly converging on the innate Dao Body within the Forbidden Zone. A terrifying aura of law instantly filled the entire sky. Moreover, due to his innate Dao physique, the aura emanating from this Supreme Being within the Forbidden Zone became extremely terrifying. This caused the fist of the Great Accomplishment Body to gradually slow down. Although the power of the Great Accomplishment Overlord Body is extremely terrifying. However, this supreme being within the forbidden zone of the innate Dao body can utilize the surrounding laws to suppress the power of the Great Accomplishment Hegemon body. This is why the power of the punch from the Great Perfection body was reduced by more than half. Even though the power of the Great Accomplished Overlord body, which had been reduced by half, still struck a supreme being in the forbidden zone once again. However, his power this time was not as terrifying as the punch he threw at the beginning. Therefore, his terrifying power was naturally blocked by the supreme being in the forbidden zone. Then it seemed that the supreme being in the penalty area also seized this opportunity. He quickly charged towards the direction of the Great Accomplished Overlord body. At the same time, the terrifying aura emanating from him swept directly around the entire area of the Great Completion Overlord body. Of course, most importantly, the long sword in his hand also fell directly towards the direction of the Great Completion body. However, the Great Perfection body did not choose to dodge when it saw this scene. Then, a terrifying aura began to erupt from his body. Then, countless purple energies instantly appeared in his hands. These purple auras, mixed with terrifying power, went directly towards the long sword in the hand of this supreme being. Just as the fist of the Great Perfection body collided with the long sword in the supreme's hand, the terrifying shockwave instantly sent the three people on the battlefield flying. Behind the Great Accomplishment body, a purple road was slowing down his steps. Then he was like a towering emperor standing tall in this long purple river. Then he gently stopped in his tracks. He looked at the two supreme figures of Peking opera in front of him with a hint of amusement in his eyes. Even the Great Perfection body did not expect that among the supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone, there would be an innate Dao body. But there was no sign of worry on his face. Instead, they continued their attack towards the innate Dao body within the Forbidden Zone. The terrifying purple aura emanating from him instantly turned the entire sky purple. Then, the terrifying aura emanating from him began to permeate the sky. The expression on the face of this supreme being in the Forbidden Zone, who possessed an innate Dao body, suddenly changed. Although he possesses an innate Dao body, which is indeed a top-tier physique. However, no matter what, his physique is not an enhancement to physical strength. Therefore, when faced with this terrifying power, he directly used the surrounding Taoist techniques to stop it. However, the saying, "one force can overcome all laws," is not just a joke. The terrifying power law of the Great Completion Overlord body directly shattered the other laws around it. Then, the terrifying purple fist landed directly on the chest of this innate Dao body in the Forbidden Zone. The terrifying force directly created a huge dent in the chest of this person with an innate Dao physique. Then flesh and blood flew out from his back in an instant. A huge crater instantly appeared on the person's chest, and this deep pit is clearly the mark of a fist. As this punch landed on the supreme figure in the restricted area, the supreme player in the penalty area instantly showed an embarrassed expression. Then, he quickly transformed into a streak of light and disappeared from the spot. However, a trace of blood was left in the sky. This made the entire sky look extremely dazzling. The supreme being beside him was now looking at the minister with a solemn expression. Only then did they realize that the minister's power far surpassed that of the other unorthodox cultivators they had encountered before. It could even be said that the strength displayed by the Great Completion body makes them feel like they're facing those powerful emperors. Moreover, he is one of the best among the emperors. Of course, the Great Perfection body did not choose to stop at this point. He revealed a row of white teeth. Then, he once again charged towards the two supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone in front of him. The terrifying power emanating from him was also immediately unleashed. The terrifying power of blood and chi caused the entire sky to tremble. While the Great Completion body was engaged in a fierce battle with the supreme being in the Forbidden Zone, the battles between the top experts on all the battlefields were also attracting much attention. Of course, the most incredible people at this moment were the top experts in these holy lands, because they did not expect that this great battle would turn out so badly from the beginning, with the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family now having the upper hand. Of course, there are also powerful individuals from the Butian Pavilion who have achieved enlightenment through unconventional means joining the ranks. This gives them a significant advantage. The only side currently at a disadvantage is probably Xianyuan Wudao's side, because Xianyuan Wudao was originally fighting two powerful opponents of the same level as him all by himself. Moreover, the strength of these two experts who were at the same level as him was by no means weak. Therefore, even if he pushes his physical abilities to the limit, it will still be extremely difficult for him to defeat the two supreme beings in front of him. Moreover, the two supreme-level experts in front of him were no weaker than him. Of course, it would be very easy for him to hold off these two top-tier supreme beings. It can be said that these two supreme beings were unable to completely eliminate him within 100 years. A century has passed. This great war has likely ended long ago. Therefore, although Xianyuan Wudao has fallen to the bottom, there is no trace of worry on his face. Of course, the most intense battle at this moment was probably fought on the side of the chaotic ancient emperor, because the two most epic battles did not take place in this universe. Therefore, the two most important battles in this universe are the battle between the chaotic ancient emperor and the terrifying supreme being in the forbidden zone opposite him, and the battle between Xianyuan Wudao and the two top supreme beings in the forbidden zone in front of him. The most compelling event right now is the great battle on the side of the chaotic ancient emperor. The eternal emperor also possessed an extremely powerful and imposing presence. Even in this fierce battle against the top player in the restricted area, he showed no expression on his face. On the contrary, the golden chariot behind him was very eye-catching. Although his golden chariot is very different from Chu Fan's Qilin chariot. However, it is considered one of the most advanced war chariots in the world. Moreover, it was so conspicuous in this great battle. Therefore, his golden chariot will likely be remembered by the entire central region and even the entire universe for some time to come. Chapter 680 Chu Fan successfully survives tribulation and breaks through to the human emperor realm. Moreover, under the relentless attacks of the chaotic ancient emperor, the top expert from the forbidden zone in front of him gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. However, the top experts in the penalty area are among the strongest in the area. Compared to those supreme beings, the strength of this top expert in the forbidden zone naturally far surpasses those so-called supreme beings. Even though he has already lost an arm to the chaotic ancient emperor, his strength at this time was also terrifying. However, his arm is slowly recovering. Although the laws of the chaotic ancient emperor were constantly eroding the terrifying power within his body. Even so, the power within his body was constantly restoring his arm. In less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, his arm had recovered most of its strength. However, at this moment, he not only had to restore his arm, but also had to fight a great battle with the chaotic ancient emperor in front of him. Therefore, this top-tier expert in the restricted area, who is currently recovering from his arm injury, is also suffering from more and more injuries. It's safe to say that his arm probably hasn't fully recovered yet, and his other arm will be completely severed by the chaotic ancient emperor, because his other arm is now also starting to break. Even the bones in the arm are clearly visible at this time. Meanwhile, the aura emanating from the chaotic ancient emperor continued to erupt. He was like a ferocious wild beast, launching a final attack on the top expert in the forbidden zone in front of him. The top expert in the restricted area looked on with a hint of helplessness upon seeing this. Even so, he used his arm, which had not yet fully recovered, to defend against the attack of the chaotic ancient emperor. Then he took the opportunity to repair his other arm. But how long can the situation last? After all, he was met with the bombardment of the chaotic ancient emperor. Moreover, the terrifying aura emanating from the chaotic ancient emperor was extremely terrifying. As the chaotic ancient emperor continued to attack the top expert in the forbidden zone in front of him, the aura emanating from the eternal emperor became extremely terrifying. Clearly, the longer the great battle lasted for the chaotic ancient emperor, the more terrifying his aura became. The top experts in the forbidden zone, who sensed this scene, also frowned. At the same time, I felt extremely helpless. After all, he knew just how vast the gap was between himself and the chaotic ancient emperor. At the same time, he also understood just how far his strength was from that of the chaotic ancient emperor. Even so, he is still constantly fighting against the chaotic ancient emperor. Of course, it would take the chaotic ancient emperor some time to kill this top expert in the forbidden zone. After all, to kill a top expert, one naturally needs time to wear them down. And while this great battle was continuing, meanwhile, Chu Fan, who was undergoing tribulation on the other side, also went through countless hardships and finally killed the Xianyuan emperor, who was transformed from lightning, in front of him. At the moment he killed the yellow emperor, a look of astonishment appeared on Chu Fan's face, because he saw that the yellow emperor seemed to be consciously nodding at him with satisfaction. This instantly caused a look of astonishment and surprise to appear on his face, because he seemed to discover that this yellow emperor possessed his own consciousness. However, he quickly looked away, because although he defeated the yellow emperor, but now he was completely exhausted. If the lightning tribulation in the sky doesn't dissipate, then he'll likely have some difficulty facing the next tribulation. Thinking of this, he looked at the lightning in the sky with a hint of surprise in his eyes. The lightning in the sky seemed to know what Chu Fan was thinking. One after another, bolts of lightning became incredibly terrifying. Chu Fan was about to use the last 20% of his power to fight against the lightning in the sky. The lightning in the sky struck him directly. However, Chu Fan quickly realized that something was wrong, because he found that the lightning that entered his body was very gentle. It seemed as if he was recovering from the injuries he had just sustained in the battle. At the same time, the less than 20% of his strength began to slowly recover. In the blink of an eye, his strength had been restored to about 70 to 80%. At the same time, Chu Fan also discovered that his cultivation level had directly entered the early stage of the human emperor realm. This made him instantly realize that he had completely survived this tribulation of lightning. Thinking of this, he slowly raised his head and looked at the thunder in the sky. Just then, the thunder in the sky slowly dissipated. Instead, a golden light shone through. As this golden light shone down from the sky like a pillar of light, the eyes of the entire universe were fixed on Chu Fan, because they discovered that the golden light fell directly on Chu Fan. This made Chu Fan look like a god descended from heaven, although Chu Fan still has some injuries. However, under the illumination of this golden light, Chu Fan's injuries began to slowly heal. Even the power within his body began to slowly increase. More importantly, a golden light was constantly spreading across the entire sky above Chang'an. At the same time, a golden phoenix instantly flew out from the sky above Chang'an City. The next second, the golden phoenix flew directly into Chu Fan's body. Then, a golden dragon instantly appeared above his head and coiled behind him. And on his forehead, a golden phoenix was constantly circling. Then Chu Fan felt a terrifying power being injected into his body. Feeling the terrifying power flowing into his body, Chu Fan sat cross-legged in the sky without hesitation. As he sat down, the aura belonging to the human emperor realm within his body erupted completely. More importantly, the golden laws of the human emperor surrounding him began to slowly form a terrifying human emperor Dharma image behind him. The image of the human emperor exuded a terrifying aura. One terrifying aura after another instantly turned the entire sky golden. Of course, Chu Fan, who was sitting cross-legged in this golden light, was constantly increasing his aura. At the same time, his aura became extremely terrifying. The aura of the human emperor realm was also completely exposed to the entire world. This resulted in the emergence of another powerful being at the human emperor level in the entire world. Chapter 681, The Impact of the Breakthrough. The Supreme Being's Frenzied Escape. At this moment, even the top experts in the Great Battle noticed the changes on Chu Fan's side. The Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family were naturally very pleased. After all, Chu Fan being able to break through to the human emperor realm was the best possible outcome for them. Meanwhile, the supreme beings within those forbidden zones became anxious. After all, Chu Fan has already broken through to the human emperor realm. So what use are they now that they're still here? Then, the supreme beings within these forbidden zones began to unleash their unprecedented power. A terrifying force instantly swept across the entire sky. Several supreme beings, taking advantage of the moment when the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family were still in a state of celebration, directly amplified the auras on their bodies to the most terrifying level. Then they quickly fled towards the restricted area. Of course, after these supreme beings escaped, the unorthodox speakers of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family finally discovered this. Then, they immediately turned their attention to the supreme being, who had not yet had time to escape, because several supremes ran away. Therefore, the top experts of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family are now looking at the supreme being in the Forbidden Zone, who is still engaged in a great battle with wary eyes. For example, the Great Accomplished Holy Body and the Great Accomplished Overlord Body are now staring intently at the four supreme beings from the Forbidden Zones in front of them. Clearly, the two of them intended to keep these four supreme beings from the Forbidden Zone. But how could these supreme beings in the restricted area be so foolish? They began to move closer and closer to each other. They quickly stood together. Then, with a solemn look in his eyes, he headed into the distance. However, just as they were about to reach the Forbidden Zone, a terrifying law instantly blocked their path. Then a young man holding the world tree appeared in front of them in an instant. This person is the Emperor. In that instant, the Emperor realized that the supreme beings within these Forbidden Zones were trying to escape. Therefore, he directly used his own world laws to stop the supreme beings who wanted to escape from these Forbidden Zones. And as the Emperor stopped the four supreme beings who wanted to escape, at this moment, the top experts of the Great Xia Empire and the unorthodox Tao-achieving experts of the Xianyuan family also quickly came to stop the four supreme beings from escaping. In an instant, these four supreme beings were surrounded by the unorthodox Tao-attaining experts from the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. As for the other supreme beings, they were either dealt with or escaped. Therefore, only these 4 supreme beings remain. However, they are now trapped between the top experts of the Great Xia Empire, the Xianyuan family, and the unorthodox Dao-achieving experts of the Butian Pavilion. Therefore, they have no chance to escape now. Then, a terrifying aura emanated from the 4 supreme beings. The terrifying aura from the Forbidden Zone descended directly upon them. This caused their aura to become extremely terrifying. Then the 4 of them charged straight toward the Emperor. At this point, they could only break through their weakest point. They believed that the weak points were the direction of the Emperor. But what they didn't know was that the Emperor might not be able to defeat the 4 of them working together. However, it would be very easy for the Emperor, who possesses the laws of the world, to stop their escape. The Emperor looked at the 4 supreme-level speakers with a hint of disdain in his eyes. Then the world tree in his hand began to slowly rise into the air. Then a terrifying power of law instantly appeared before the Emperor. This terrifying power of law instantly neutralized the attacks of the 4 supreme-level experts. However, the Emperor and the world tree in the sky were directly blasted away by this terrifying force. Of course, the Emperor had already bought enough time for the powerful figures on the Xia Empire's side. The great accomplished holy body and the great accomplished hegemonic body have now caught up. Meanwhile, other powerful individuals who had achieved enlightenment through unconventional means once again surrounded these 4 supreme beings. Then, these top experts launched their final attack on the 4 supreme beings. The terrifying force crashed directly towards the 4 supreme beings. One terrifying force after another pierced through the bodies of these 4 supreme beings. Instantly, these 4 supreme beings began to appear illusory. More importantly, those terrifying powers caused the power of these 4 supreme beings to slowly diminish. As one terrifying force after another descended upon the 4 supreme beings, these 4 supreme beings within the Forbidden Zone ultimately perished in silence. Of course, it could also be described as a spectacular fall. After the 4 supreme beings fell, a blood-red rain once again appeared in the sky. However, the crimson rain of blood was quickly dissipated by the golden light emanating from Chu Fan's body. Therefore, the blood-red rain in the sky quickly disappeared. The others, having dealt with the 4 supreme beings, then looked up at the sky. Because there are still 2 supreme beings in the sky, opposite the Sun Emperor, who have not been dealt with. However, neither of these 2 supreme beings had any fighting spirit at this moment. Instead, they were thinking about how to escape this great battle. Then, without any hesitation, the 2 supreme beings headed directly towards the forbidden area. However, before they could escape back to the Forbidden Zone, the great accomplished Overlord body and the great accomplished Holy body appeared before them. 2 absolute beings of top-tier power appeared before the 2, unleashing terrifying force as they charged towards them. 2 terrifying punches shot directly toward the 2 supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone. Then this terrifying power directly blasted the 2 supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone back. At this time, the Emperor and his entourage naturally arrived at the battlefield. Then dozens of people surrounded the 2 supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone. The 2 supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone who witnessed this scene knew that they could no longer escape. Then, a hint of madness instantly appeared in the eyes of these 2 supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone. The next second, the aura emanating from the 2 of them became extremely terrifying. Then the power within their bodies exploded completely. A terrifying force spread directly outwards. Upon seeing this, everyone quickly retreated. If they had acted at the beginning, they might have been able to prevent these 2 supreme beings in the restricted area from self-destructing. However, they were too far away from these 2 supreme beings in the restricted area. Therefore, they naturally could not stop these 2 supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone from self-destructing. Fortunately, the self-destruction of these 2 supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone did not harm the powerful figures of the Great Xia Empire or the Xianyuan family. Instead, this resulted in the elimination of 2 more players in the penalty area. And so this supreme-level battle came to an end. Chapter 682, The Battle Within the Domain, ends, shocking the central domain. After these 2 supreme-level powerhouses fell, blood rain once again fell from the sky. Of course, the blood rain was completely diluted by the golden light the moment it appeared. This makes the light in the sky look more like golden light. It was as if a sun stood between heaven and earth. And after these supreme beings within the Forbidden Zone perished, the experts from the Great Xia Empire, the Xianyuan family, and the other unorthodox Dao-achieving powerhouses from the Butian Pavilion all returned to their original positions. They enveloped Chu Fan, the human emperor of the Great Xia Empire, who had already reached the human emperor realm, because they cannot allow Chu Fan to suffer any further harm now. Meanwhile, Chu Fan was continuously absorbing the golden rays of light in the sky. These golden rays allowed his aura to gradually grow stronger. Therefore, everyone present was very much looking forward to seeing just how far Chu Fan could go. As for the Void Emperor now, he stood on the void, his eyes filled with awe as he gazed towards the Forbidden Zone. Although all the supreme beings in the restricted area have been driven away by them, but they still need to keep an eye on the restricted area. In addition to the restricted area, there's also the Heavenly God Academy hiding in the shadows. After all, the Heavenly God Academy is not as simple as one might imagine. The strength of the three masters who appeared this time alone is terrifying. Fortunately, the Great Xia Empire also has its own foundation. Therefore, the three masters of Tianshan Academy probably won't have it as easy as they imagine this time. As the supreme beings within these forbidden zones all perished, the top expert from one of these forbidden zones, standing beside the chaotic ancient emperor, also showed a hint of retreat in his eyes. He was never a match for the chaotic ancient emperor. Now, all the supreme beings in their restricted area have retreated. Even the supreme beings within the forbidden zones, who had not retreated, have now perished in this great battle. So, should he leave this great battle now? Thinking of this, he immediately turned his gaze to the two top experts from the Forbidden Zone in front of Xian Yuan Wudao. These two top experts from the Forbidden Zone naturally noticed the gaze of this expert from the Forbidden Zone. These two top experts nodded to the powerful figure from the Forbidden Zone standing before the chaotic ancient emperor. The three of them then instantly transformed into three beams of light and headed towards the restricted area. Clearly, they had already decided to leave. After all, things are already quite unfriendly to them, so they naturally chose to leave. After these three top experts from the Forbidden Zone left, the chaotic ancient emperor and Xian Yuan Wudao also came together. The chaotic ancient emperor looked at the direction the trio had left in the forbidden area with a hint of resentment on his face. He originally intended to leave this top expert from the restricted area here, but unexpectedly, this top expert in the restricted area still managed to escape. This moment made him feel somewhat unwilling. I can't believe that damn guy got away. If I had more time, I could have killed him. Then, with a look of resentment in his eyes, the chaotic ancient emperor spoke in the direction of the three top experts from the Forbidden Zone who had left. At the same time, the terrifying aura emanating from him caused the entire space to tremble. It would take you at least several months to kill him, but we don't have several months to wait for us right now, so the only way to kill him is to wait for the next opportunity. After hearing his words, Xian Yuan Wudao slowly walked up and spoke. After speaking, he looked into the distance with a hint of expectation in his eyes. After all, he had truly witnessed the power of the Great Xia Empire this time. Therefore, he now wants to see if he can witness the complete destruction of the Great Xia Empire, the top experts in the Forbidden Zone, or the destruction of the Heavenly God Academy. After all, this time, both the Forbidden Zone and the Heavenly God Academy have thoroughly angered the Great Xia Empire. Even if the Great Xia Empire doesn't have the power to destroy them, but it's still possible to beat them up. After all, the strength that the Great Xia Empire had demonstrated this time far exceeded his expectations. The strength of the two top experts who appeared last far exceeded his expectations. Moreover, there was also the chaotic ancient emperor beside him, who was no weaker than him. If he reappears next time, it will be his death day. Upon hearing Xian Yuan Wudao's words, the chaotic ancient emperor looked into the distance with a determined expression and spoke. After he finished speaking, a serious look appeared in his eyes. At the same time, he transformed into a beam of light and headed towards Chang'an City of the Great Xia Empire. At this moment, the sky above Chang'an was filled with golden light. These terrifying golden rays of light were continuously pouring into Chu Fan's body. It was as if these golden rays could greatly enhance Chu Fan's strength. Of course, Chu Fan is also constantly improving his strength within this golden light. Perhaps it won't be long before his strength reaches an astonishing level. Xian Yuan Wudao shook his head as he looked in the direction where the supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone had left. Then he completely concealed his aura. Then, without any surprise, they headed towards Chang'an City, where Chu Fan was located. Then, the chaotic ancient emperor and Xian Yuan Wudao appeared directly in the sky. Both of them were taking in their surroundings with a scrutinizing look in their eyes. The two of them naturally didn't want Chu Fan to be disturbed. Therefore, the aura emanating from both of them was extremely terrifying. Just as the two returned from the sky, the top experts from the Holy Lands throughout the central region also realized what was happening. Although at this point, they did not know the extent of the two top-level battles outside. However, judging solely from the performance of the Heavenly God Academy and the supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone, it is clear that they will not be the ultimate victors in this great battle. After all, so many supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone have already been killed. However, none of the top experts from the Heavenly God Academy have appeared yet. This shows that the ultimate victor of this great war has fallen to the Great Xia Empire. Moreover, Chu Fan, the emperor of the Great Xia Empire, also broke through to the legendary human emperor realm during this great battle. It should be known that only the former Yellow Emperor could break through to this level. Although they didn't know why the Great Xia Empire had a being at the human emperor level, Chu Fan had still successfully become a legend in their eyes. Chapter 683, The Heaven-Mending Pavilion's Relief, and the Heavenly God Academy's Worries. It's fair to say that even if they racked their brains, they never imagined the final outcome would be like this. After all, when the dark turmoil came, not so many supreme beings in those dark forbidden zones perished. On the contrary, many of their top experts in their holy land have perished. I never expected that this great battle would end so hastily. More importantly, the Great Xia Empire actually achieved a final victory and killed an unprecedented number of supreme beings. A holy lord of a holy land looked at Chu Fan, who was in the golden storm in the sky, with disbelief in his eyes, and said, you could see a strong sense of emotion in his eyes. Clearly, even he hadn't expected that Chu Fan's Great Xia Empire possessed such terrifying strength. I'm afraid no one would have thought that the victory of this great war would fall into the hands of the Great Xia Empire. Moreover, even if our Butian Pavilion had not participated, the final victory of this great war would still have belonged to the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. Meanwhile, the Quasi-Emperor at the peak of the realm on the Patching Heaven Pavilion side leisurely looked at the golden light in the sky and said, after he finished speaking, there was a hint of emotion in his eyes. Although this time the Butian Pavilion did indeed help the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. However, even this Quasi-Emperor from the Heaven-Mending Pavilion could see that even if they didn't help the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family could still achieve victory in this great war together with the Great Xia Empire. Thinking of this, the Quasi-Emperor of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion also had a complicated look in his eyes. Fortunately, this great battle turned out to be a very positive event for their Patching Heaven Pavilion. After all, from today onwards, their Patching Heaven Pavilion is on the front line of the Great Xia Empire. Yes, who could have imagined that the Great Xia Empire would have so many top experts? But the strength of the two top experts who appeared later far exceeded our expectations. Beside this Quasi-Emperor at the peak of the Patching Heaven Pavilion, another Quasi-Emperor elder slowly spoke up. After he finished speaking, he looked into the distance with a touch of emotion in his eyes. Clearly, even he hadn't expected that the victor of this great battle would actually be the Great Xia Empire. Although from the very beginning, their Patching Heaven Pavilion intended to help the Great Xia Empire. However, even the Butian Pavilion had not expected that the Great Xia Empire's strength would be so terrifying. Although this time we witnessed just how terrifying the Great Xia Empire's strength truly is, our investment in the Great Xia Empire has earned us lasting friendship. After all, they're unlikely to launch an attack on our Heavenly Patching Pavilion. However, the Heavenly God Academy and the Supreme Beings in the Forbidden Zone will probably not have it so easy. Another elder from the Butian Pavilion then spoke with Schadenfreude. At the same time, a hint of relief could be seen in the old man's eyes. If the Butian Pavilion hadn't chosen to help the Great Xia Empire, how could they have gotten in touch with it? It is likely that the entire world will undergo a tremendous change in the near future. Of course, the source of this change will depend on the Great Xia Empire. After all, the Great Xia Empire can now easily decide the fate of a holy land. It can be said that the Great Xia Empire is now superior to these holy lands in the central region. Although the Great Xia Empire's strength far surpassed that of these holy lands from the very beginning. However, the Great Xia Empire was not as powerful as it was at that time. Only now, with the strength displayed by the Great Xia Empire, can it overwhelm all the holy lands. Even now, these holy sites are probably thinking about how to curry favor with the Great Xia Empire. The others also showed a hint of agreement in their eyes after hearing his words. Then they all looked into the distance with a mixture of relief and mockery in their eyes. And the truth was exactly as these Quasi-Emperor-level elders of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion had thought. At this moment, as the supreme beings in those forbidden zones began to fall, the eyes of the three great Emperor-level experts from the Heavenly God Academy were filled with disbelief. As the number of supreme beings falling within the forbidden zone increased, the worry in the eyes of the great Emperor-level experts from the Heavenly God Academy grew increasingly severe. Even now, the three great Emperor-level experts from the Heavenly God Academy are still staring at the sky with wide-eyed disbelief. I never expected that this great battle would end in this way. The great Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy, who was in the late stage of the great Emperor realm, looked up at the sky with a hint of worry in his eyes and said, at the same time, he was pondering how to face the Great Xia Empire. After all, the strength of the Great Xia Empire far exceeded their expectations. Who could have imagined that the Great Xia Empire's strength was so terrifying. Right now, the entire Great Xia Empire is probably thinking about how to deal with our Heavenly God Academy. Another powerful Great Emperor from the Heavenly God Academy, who was in the late stage of the Great Emperor realm, frowned and spoke. After he finished speaking, he looked into the distance with a thoughtful expression in his eyes. Clearly, he was also pondering how to deal with the Great Xia Empire. After all, the Great Xia Empire now seems to be beyond the reach of the Heavenly God Academy. After all, the number of top experts in the Great Xia Empire seems to be no less than that of their Heavenly God Academy. Although the Great Xia Empire is indeed very powerful, if they want to attack my Heavenly God Academy, then they are underestimating my Heavenly God Academy. The last Great Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy, who was at the mid-stage of the Great Emperor realm, stepped forward with a disdainful expression and said, after he finished speaking, you could see that he had complete confidence in the entire Heavenly God Academy. After all, the Heavenly God Academy is the oldest and most prestigious power. How could they not have their own trump cards? More importantly, the real top-level battle is not over yet. If the three top experts of our Heavenly God Academy can defeat the experts of the Great Xia Empire, then the Great Xia Empire should worry about the attack of our Heavenly God Academy. Then, with a confident look in his eyes, he gazed at the sky and spoke. You can feel that the confidence in his eyes comes from the heart. It was as if he could already see their Heavenly God Academy's top expert defeating the Great Xia Empire's top expert. After all, no matter how powerful the top expert of the Great Xia Empire is, there is only one. And this time, the Heavenly God Academy had 3 members who fought against the top experts of the Great Xia Empire. Therefore, he now believes that the 3 top experts from their Heavenly God Academy are capable of defeating the top expert from the Great Xia Empire. Chapter 684: The Shock of the Entire Continent. The Expectations of All Cultivators. The other 2 great emperors from the Heavenly God Academy, though still carrying a hint of worry, were also hoping that their own top experts could defeat the Great Xia Empire's top experts. If the top experts of their Heavenly God Academy could defeat the top experts of the Great Xia Empire, then even if the Great Xia Empire gains the upper hand in this great battle, the ultimate victors will still be the top experts from their Heavenly God Academy and the Forbidden Zone. Then they leisurely turned their gaze to the sky. They also wanted to see how this great battle would ultimately end. At the same time that the 3 great Emperor-level powerhouses from the Heavenly God Academy all looked up at the sky. At this point, the great war concerning the Great Xia Empire had come to a complete end. Of course, what came to an end was the Great War in this universe. The Great War outside the universe is not yet completely over. However, at this moment, all the other top experts or rogue cultivators in the universe were looking at the direction of the Great Xia Empire with respect. They gazed with adoration at the figure in the sky that radiated golden light. At the same time, they did not expect that the power of this figure radiating golden light would be so terrifying. The strength of the top experts cultivated by the Great Xia Empire alone far surpasses that of the so-called supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone. I never expected that the Great Xia Empire could defeat the supreme being in the Forbidden Zone so easily, and even kill so many supreme being level experts. You should know that even during the dark turmoil, not so many supreme beings perished. An old man, trembling, looked at the golden figure in the sky and spoke. It was clear that the old man was extremely excited. Clearly, being able to resolve these dark winds in the sky would be a very good thing for him. Of course, these supreme-level powerhouses are extremely powerful. However, he had never witnessed just how powerful a true supreme-level expert really was. I've only heard about how powerful the supreme beings were during the dark turmoil from ancient books. Therefore, it was naturally unbelievable to him that the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family had killed so many supreme-level experts this time. Yes, I didn't expect the Great Xia Empire to be so powerful. They killed so many supreme-level experts so easily. It seems that the Great Xia Empire will surpass the Forbidden Zone. I wonder to what extent the battle between the 2 top experts of the Great Xia Empire, the top experts in the Forbidden Zone, and the top experts of the Heavenly God Academy has reached. Although I don't know the extent of the war outside, I'm certain that the Great Xia Empire will be the ultimate victor, and only when the Great Xia Empire achieves final victory can we safely weather this crisis. That's right. Only in this way can we truly overcome this crisis. Otherwise, these top experts in the Forbidden Zone might completely destroy the entire universe. At this time, although many people admired the Great Xia Empire, many others were also looking forward to the 2 most powerful battles outside. They also wanted to see who would emerge victorious in these 2 top-tier battles. Of course, at this time, they also hoped that the Great Xia Empire would be the victor in these 2 great battles. Only in this way, if the Great Xia Empire wins, will their lives be safe. Otherwise, who knows if these supreme beings within the Forbidden Zone might launch a dark upheaval. After all, the timing of the outbreak of the dark turmoil is unpredictable. Of course, the incalculability also refers to these independent cultivators. The top experts in the true Holy Lands naturally have their own trump cards and can know exactly when the supreme beings in the Forbidden Zones will launch the dark turmoil. While the entire central region was bustling with activity, the great battle outside the region was naturally also incredibly terrifying. After all, the strength of each person fighting on their side had reached a terrifying level. Of course, at this point, they could also sense that the great war in the universe had completely ended. The three top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone, standing before the Sword Emperor, stared at him with disbelief in their eyes. Of course, what was incredible about them was that the Great Xia Empire was far too powerful. They still managed to kill so many supreme beings in their Forbidden Zone so easily. How is this possible? How could a small Great Xia Empire kill so many supreme beings? Then, he designated a top expert from the Forbidden Zone, who looked at the Sword Emperor in disbelief and spoke. After speaking, he slowly turned his gaze back to the universe. At this moment, his gaze seemed to pierce through time and space, looking at Chu Fan, who was constantly absorbing the power between heaven and earth. The other two top experts from the Forbidden Zones beside him also wore expressions of disbelief. Clearly, they hadn't anticipated this step either. After all, who could have imagined that the Great Xia Empire was so powerful that it could so easily deal with the supreme beings in these Forbidden Zones? Why would it be difficult for our Great Xia Empire to destroy a mere supreme being? Even if I were given some time, it would be very easy for me to kill the three of you. Upon hearing the words of the supreme being from the Dark Forbidden Zone, the Sword Emperor spoke calmly. Although his words were spoken calmly, one could discern a hint of domineering power within them. At the same time, the aura emanating from him was extremely sharp. He was like a precious sword standing between heaven and earth. The terrifying sword energy caused the surrounding space to tremble. Such sword energy could probably kill those so-called supreme beings inside with just a single stroke. This is the difference between true top-tier experts and true powerhouses. Although those supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone can be considered strong. However, there's naturally a gap between them and the top experts. You think you can kill us? You're utterly foolish. Upon hearing the Sword Emperor's words, a hint of anger instantly appeared in the eyes of the top experts in the Forbidden Area. Then one of the top experts charged directly towards the Sword Emperor. At the same time, the terrifying aura emanating from him was also released. The other two top experts, upon seeing this, also headed directly towards the Sword Emperor without hesitation, although they are now showing signs of backing down. However, they naturally could not allow the Sword Emperor in front of them to insult them. After all, they are top-tier experts. Chapter 685, The Forbidden Zone Experts Retreat. The Sword Emperor charges towards the three masters of the Heavenly God Academy. The terrifying force is constantly operating beyond its capacity. This made the entire outer realm extremely dark. Of course, they were also very clear at this time that the great battle inside had completely ended. Therefore, these three top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone, although still engaged in a fierce battle with the Sword Emperor of the Great Xia Empire, were beginning to ponder how to end this great war. After all, they now know that even if they achieve final victory in this great battle, it won't have much of an impact. After all, there are still beings within the Great Xia Empire that they are unaware of. So all they want now is to retreat. The three of them looked determined as they thought about this. Then, the three top experts in the Dark Forbidden Zone joined forces and directly repelled the Sword Emperor. Then, these three top experts transformed into three streaks of light and headed towards the Dark Forbidden Zone. Clearly, at this point, they no longer intended to continue the battle. The Sword Emperor was not at all surprised to see this. Instead, it transformed into a beam of sword light and headed towards another battlefield. Although the battle on his side had completely ended. However, the Gun Emperor of the Great Xia Empire is currently engaged in a fierce battle with three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy. At this time, the Gun Emperor was suppressing the three top experts of the Heavenly God Academy with his terrifying strength. Therefore, the three top experts of the Heavenly God Academy were looking at the Gun Emperor in front of them with helplessness in their eyes. It can be said that as the battle drags on, the injuries of these three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy will become more and more serious. After all, they had already been severely injured by the former Emperor Xinyuan. Now, in such a terrifying battle against the Gun Emperor, their injuries are naturally getting more and more serious. At the same time, as top-tier powerhouses, they naturally sensed that the great war in their universe had ended. The ultimate victors were the Great Xia Empire and the Xinyuan family. Thinking of this, they naturally felt a sense of hesitation. However, the three of them are still being suppressed by the Gun Emperor. Therefore, they naturally could not withdraw from this battlefield at this point. Gun King, how about we stop fighting? Then, Tinue from the Heavenly God Academy, with a hint of helplessness in his eyes, spoke to the Gun Emperor of the Great Empire. After he finished speaking, you could see a hint of loneliness and helplessness in his eyes. Clearly, he hadn't expected this outcome. Thinking about this, she felt somewhat helpless. Upon hearing his words, the other two also immediately turned their gazes to the Gun Emperor in front of them. They also wanted to see if this top expert of the Great Xia Empire would agree to their demands. Do you think I'm incapable of killing you? Gun Emperor showed no emotion after hearing his words. Instead, he calmly looked at the three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy and spoke. After he finished speaking, the terrifying gun intent emanating from him completely erupted. At the same time, the spear in his hand trembled. The terrifying power instantly swept across all the heavens and myriad realms. At the same time, the spear in his hand carried terrifying power as it charged towards the three top experts of the Heavenly God Academy. In an instant, a hail of gunfire rained down on the three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy. The terrifying power forced the three top experts of the Heavenly God Academy to join forces once again to resist it. At the same time, it could be seen that the three top experts of the Heavenly God Academy also had a very strong anger in their eyes, because they didn't expect that even though they had regressed, the Gun Emperor of the Great Xia Empire still wanted to kill them. Thinking of this, the three top experts of the Heavenly God Academy showed no intention of continuing the negotiations. Instead, a terrifying power emanated from his body. Then, three attacks merged together and hurtled towards the Gun Emperor. The power of this attack far exceeded the aura that the three of them could emit at the time. Gun Emperor's eyes also showed a solemn expression when he saw this scene. Then he quickly threw the spear in his hand. He transformed into a white dragon and appeared in the sky. His spear had become completely integrated with him. The white dragon instantly transformed into a terrifying force, directly colliding with the attacks launched by the three top experts in the sky. At the moment of the collision, a violent ripple was generated throughout the sky. Upon seeing this, the three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy wanted to retreat. After all, their only option now is to withdraw. Just as the three were about to leave the battlefield, a silver-white light suddenly appeared in the sky. Then a silver-white immortal sword appeared directly in front of the three of them. Then it completely halted the three people's advance. At the same time, a playful voice slowly drifted from afar. Since we're already here, why go back? As soon as the voice rang out, the three top experts of the Heavenly God Academy immediately turned their gazes toward the direction from which the voice came. Their gazes instantly locked onto a silvery white light. Then they saw a middle-aged man slowly descend from the sky. A terrifying aura of sword energy emanated from the middle-aged man. These terrifying sword energies completely tore apart the surrounding space. As the middle-aged man arrived, the silver-white long sword in front of the three top experts of the Heavenly God Academy instantly transformed into a beam of light and appeared in the middle-aged man's hand. This made the middle-aged man's aura even more terrifying. The three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy finally recognized the middle-aged man who had appeared in front of them. Anger and resentment instantly appeared on their faces. I didn't expect that even the three top experts in a restricted area couldn't stop you. It seems that those three so-called top experts in a restricted area are nothing but three pieces of trash. Then, Tianjue from the Heavenly God Academy spoke with a hint of anger in his eyes. At the same time, he also showed a hint of disdain towards the three top experts in a restricted area. He originally thought that even if the three experts in the Forbidden Area couldn't defeat the Sword Emperor of the Great Xia Empire, they could still hold him off. However, they never expected that the Sword Emperor of the Great Xia Empire would appear on their battlefield. This instantly made the three students from the Heavenly God Academy resent the three so-called top experts in the Forbidden Area. After all, if they hadn't been unable to hold back this top expert of the Great Xia Empire, therefore, they would not be able to face this top expert of the Great Xia Empire now. Chapter 686, A Celestial Being from the Heavenly God Academy makes a move. The Great Xia Empire's overbearing counterattack. The other two top experts from the Heavenly God Academy also nodded angrily after hearing Tianju's words. Clearly, they hadn't expected that even the three top experts in the Forbidden Zone wouldn't be able to withstand this top expert from the Great Xia Empire. This instantly made them furious at the three top experts in the Forbidden Zone. However, no matter how helpless they were at this point, they could only face the top experts surrounding the Great Xia Empire once again. Moreover, it was because this top expert of the Great Xia Empire was holding them back. Next, they will face off against two of the most powerful figures in the Great Xia Empire. Moreover, one of them can suppress their presence. Therefore, they may face the possibility of their lives being endangered by the top experts of the Great Xia Empire. Upon hearing Tianjue's words from the Heavenly God Academy, the Sword Emperor nodded in agreement. Those three guys in the restricted area are indeed three useless pieces of trash, but it's good that they retreated, otherwise I wouldn't be able to keep you here now. Then he looked at the three masters of the Heavenly God Academy and spoke in a low voice. After he finished speaking, the immortal sword in his hand emitted one terrifying sword aura after another. These terrifying sword energies formed a terrifying net shape, completely enveloping the three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy. Seeing this, the three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy knew that if they didn't fight to the death today, so the three of them will probably stay here today. Thinking of this, a look of anger instantly appeared in their eyes. Then, the three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy instantly emitted a terrifying aura. Then these terrifying auras rushed directly towards the Sword Emperor. Although the Sword Emperor's strength is not as terrifying as the Gun Emperor's, he is still a top-tier expert. Therefore, it is quite easy to withstand the attack of these three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy. However, his battle with the three top experts in the restricted area was not as easy as it had been at the beginning. While the Sword Emperor was engaged in a fierce battle with the three masters of the Heavenly God Academy, the Gun Emperor was also recovering from the attack he had just suffered. He slowly descended from the sky, holding a long spear. Then his gaze drifted leisurely to the three geniuses of the Heavenly God Academy. At the same time, he was also thinking about which of the three masters in the Heavenly God Academy he should kill, although the two of them together can suppress the three masters of the Heavenly God Academy. However, killing the three top experts of the Heavenly God Academy was not as simple as it seemed. Therefore, they naturally want to maximize their profits now. Killing even one of the three masters of the Heavenly God Academy would be considered a decent victory. After all, it is extremely difficult for top experts who have reached the level of 5th or 6th Emperor to kill them. Ultimately, the Gun Emperor also fixed his gaze on Wu Ju of the Heavenly God Academy, because now he wants to kill the three people from the Heavenly God Academy, and the easiest way is to kill this person. As for the other two, the Sword Emperor can quickly hold them off. Without hesitation, he grabbed his spear and charged forward. The terrifying power shot directly at Wu Ju from the Heavenly God Academy. The three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy reacted instantly upon seeing this scene, so they joined forces to block the Gun Emperor's shot. However, the sword energy from behind was heading in their direction again. Subsequently, the three students from the Heavenly God Academy were somewhat helpless in resisting the attacks of the two. In just a short time, the three of them developed numerous injuries. After all, the combined strength of the Gun Emperor and the Sword Emperor is terrifying. Just as the three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy were looking at each other with expressions of helplessness and resentment, suddenly, a terrifying aura emanated from the Heavenly God Academy. This terrifying aura seemed to envelop the entire world. This made the entire world seem dark. The next second, a giant hand slammed down directly towards the Gun Emperor and Sword Emperor. This terrifying power has surpassed the strength of an ordinary Emperor-level expert. Even a terrifyingly powerful figure like the Gun Emperor, at the Great Emperor level, seemed like an ant standing beneath this giant hand. However, just as this large hand was about to slap down on the Gun Emperor, a cold snort also came from Chang'an City of the Great Xia Empire. This cold snort resounded throughout the entire universe. At the same time, a domineering aura emanated directly from Chang'an City of the Great Xia Empire. The next second, the giant hand in the sky was completely shattered by this terrifying and domineering aura. Even so, the giant hand in the sky transformed into starlight and took away the three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy. Then only the Gun Emperor and the Sword Emperor remained, standing between heaven and earth, their faces covered in cold sweat. They looked in the direction of the Heavenly God Academy with a hint of resentment in their eyes. The two then transformed into two streaks of light and headed towards the Great Xia Empire. Soon, the Gun Emperor and the Sword Emperor appeared directly above Chang'an City of the Great Xia Empire. They bowed respectfully towards the direction of Chang'an before turning their gaze to their emperor. Meanwhile, the others standing above Chang'an City had expressions of shock in their eyes. For a brief moment, they felt as if the world was ending. Even the entire central region could be completely annihilated by those two terrifying auras. This moment instantly filled them with a sense of resentment. Fortunately, the terrifying aura of the Great Xia Empire directly dispersed the terrifying aura emanating from the Heavenly God Academy. This also made them fully realize just how terrifying the strength of truly top-tier experts really is. Especially at this moment, Xian Yuan Wu Dao of the Xian Yuan family looked in the direction of the Heavenly God Academy with an incredulous look in his eyes. The aura that had just been emitted made him feel unprecedented pressure. Even under the terrifying aura of the Heavenly God Academy, he couldn't even muster the ability to resist. The owner of that hand from the Heavenly God Academy was definitely far beyond the Great Emperor realm. Could it be a legendary true immortal realm expert who made the move? Then, Xian Yuan Wudao secretly guessed in his heart. After guessing, he looked at Chu Fan of the Great Xia Empire in front of him with a serious look in his eyes. Besides the aura of the top expert from the Heavenly God Academy, he also sensed an even more terrifying aura emanating from the depths of Chang'an City in the Great Xia Empire. Even standing here, he could almost feel that aura that could easily obliterate him. Chapter 687 The Shocked Crowd. The speculation of the remnant immortal powerhouse from the Heavenly God Academy. It can be said that he was very clear about the level of the owner of that terrifying aura from the Great Xia Empire. It seems that even I underestimated the Great Xia Empire. The one in the Great Xia Empire is probably a true immortal. So, whether it is the Great Xia Empire or the Heavenly God Academy, there are people that the Xianyuan family cannot resist. Then he silently looked in the direction of the Great Xia Empire and said, after he finished speaking, a look of shock appeared in his eyes. If it's really as he suspected, therefore, neither the top experts in the Great Xia Empire nor the top experts in the Heavenly God Academy could withstand them. Moreover, judging from the Heavenly God Academy's plan, the great war between the Great Xia Empire and the Heavenly God Academy will definitely break out again. The great war between the two powers will likely destroy this universe. After all, the two who had just made their move were probably already at the true immortal level, as he had guessed. It should be noted that the true immortal realm is merely a guess by the top emperor-level powerhouses in their universe. But now, this kind of realm has actually appeared in this universe. If that's really the case, what power does their universe have to withstand such terrifying strength? The others around him also looked at the two directions with a sense of shock and disbelief, because they could naturally feel just now that they were like ants standing between heaven and earth. Meanwhile, the unconventional paths to enlightenment of the Xianyuan family and the Butian Pavilion are also speculating about the true extent of the strength of the two top experts from the Great Xia Empire and the Heavenly God Academy. After all, the aura it had just emitted far exceeded their expectations. Of course, no matter how much they speculated, they never guessed that it was related to immortals. After all, this was beyond their comprehension. However, they were also very clear that both the Heavenly God Academy and the Great Xia Empire had their own foundations. Moreover, this level of knowledge and experience far exceeded their expectations. The strength of the person from the Heavenly God Academy who just made a move far exceeded their expectations. Moreover, the cold wind from the Great Xia Empire directly interrupted the attack of the top expert from the Heavenly God Academy. While these top experts in the skies above Chang'an were still in shock, at this moment, the three masters of the Heavenly God Academy also appeared in the Angel Academy. Standing before them was a middle-aged man dressed in a long black robe. The middle-aged man had no aura. He seemed like an ordinary person. However, it can be seen that the three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy in front of him have great respect for him. She looked at the middle-aged man in front of her with a hint of admiration in her eyes. The middle-aged man then let out a long sigh. His gaze slowly returned from the distance. I never imagined that the Great Xia Empire would have a true immortal-level being. It seems we underestimated the Great Xia Empire after all. Then he slowly uttered these words, the shock in his eyes not diminishing in the slightest, because he hadn't expected that there would actually be true immortals in the Great Xia Empire. Thinking about this, he began to have some concerns about the future plans of the Heavenly God Academy. The three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy beside him stared at the middle-aged man in shock after hearing his words. They never expected that their ancestor would say that there were true immortals in the Great Xia Empire. Ancestor, if that's the case, should we continue with our plan? Then, Tianjue stepped forward with a helpless look in his eyes and spoke to the middle-aged man. After he finished speaking, there was a look of worry on his face. If there were truly immortal beings within the Great Xia Empire, their plans would likely not have been executed so perfectly. After all, they were afraid that the Yellow Emperor would grow to the true immortal realm and stop their plans, which is why they completely banished the Yellow Emperor from this universe. However, no one expected that after the Yellow Emperor was driven out of this universe, a true immortal would actually appear. If this being at the true immortal realm wanted to resist them and disrupt their plans, he certainly could. Although the Great Xia Empire has a true immortal, the laws of this universe are very incomplete. A true immortal cannot unleash his true power. However, my Heavenly God Academy has several incomplete immortals who can deal with the true immortal of the Great Xia Empire. At this moment, the top expert from the Heavenly God Academy spoke leisurely. At the same time, it can be seen that there is not much worry in his eyes. Although it is true that a true immortal is stronger than a remnant immortal. However, the laws governing this universe are extremely fragmented. Therefore, even the strength displayed by a true immortal is similar to that displayed by a remnant immortal. Therefore, they are naturally not afraid. After hearing the words of this top expert from the Heavenly God Academy, the three masters of the Academy breathed a sigh of relief. If that's really the case, then their Heavenly God Academy's plan can continue. Of course, what they didn't see was that the middle-aged man from the Heavenly God Academy, dressed in a black robe, still had a look of worry and doubt on his face. Because the laws of this universe are extremely fragile, it is impossible for a true immortal to exist in this universe. If that person is indeed a powerful being at the true immortal realm, then he may have come from the upper realm. Thinking of this, he naturally worried that there was more than just one true immortal realm expert coming from the upper realm. Moreover, if that person hadn't come from the upper realm, then he couldn't have broken through to the true immortal realm in this universe. The only possibility is the legendary immortal of the mortal world. Thinking of this, the look in his eyes instantly turned worried. If it really is a powerful being at the mortal immortal realm, then their Heavenly God Academy's plans might indeed be disrupted. After all, the strength of a red dust immortal realm expert is probably too much for their Heavenly God Academy's remnant immortal realm experts to withstand. Moreover, after tens of millions of years, no red dust immortal has ever appeared in their Heavenly God Academy. They had only heard of the immortal of the mortal world, but had never actually seen one. Therefore, he naturally did not know just how powerful the red dust immortal was. Now he only hopes that the laws of this universe can suppress the power of the mortal immortal. Otherwise, if the one from the Great Xia Empire really is the immortal of the mortal world, then they'll be in trouble. Chapter 688: The Decision of the Heavenly God Academy and the Helpless Patching Heaven Pavilion. However, this top-tier, remnant, immortal-level expert from the Heavenly God Academy quickly withdrew his gaze. Then he leisurely turned his gaze to the three masters in front of him. The path to immortality will open in 100 years, so do not provoke the Great Xia Empire during this period. After speaking, the remnant immortal from the Heavenly God Academy transformed into a beam of light and vanished before the three masters of the Heavenly God Academy. Clearly, this remnant immortal was also planning to return to his seclusion at this time. After all, his main purpose in coming out now is to save the three geniuses of the Heavenly God Academy. Now that he has achieved his goal, it's time for him to go back and rest. After hearing the words of the crippled immortal from the Heavenly God Academy, the three masters of the Heavenly God Academy could only nod helplessly. At the same time, they were also grateful that they had not perished at the hands of these two top experts of the Great Xia Empire. After all, if it weren't for the top experts from their Angel Academy saving them this time, at least one of the three masters of the Heavenly God Academy would have perished. Thinking about this, they felt extremely fortunate. After all, if it weren't for this remnant immortal from the Heavenly God Academy, they would have perished by now. However, this great battle also made them realize that there were top-tier beings within the Great Xia Empire. Moreover, it's the kind of being that may have already reached the level of a true immortal. Thinking of this, they looked towards the direction of the Great Xia Empire with solemnity and lingering fear in their eyes. If they had known from the beginning that such a terrifying existence existed within the Great Xia Empire, they would not have chosen to take action in the first place. After all, if such a terrifying existence truly existed within the Great Xia Empire, then it would be even easier for others to eliminate them. Thinking of this, the three top experts from Angel Academy also looked towards the direction of the Great Xia Empire with worry in their eyes. However, they quickly concealed the worry in their eyes. Then, he leisurely turned his gaze back to the direction of the Heavenly God Academy. Subsequently, the three top experts from the Heavenly God Academy also chose to return directly to their secluded cultivation. After all, the plans of the Heavenly God Academy will not happen for another 100 years. Therefore, they naturally need to wait another 100 years. More importantly, their injuries were extremely serious. It is possible that they will not be able to completely heal their injuries within the next 100 years. Therefore, they naturally wouldn't choose to waste time now. Of course, at the same time that the Heavenly God Academy discovered that there were beings in the Great Xia Empire who might be at the true immortal realm. At this time, the Butian Pavilion, one of the two top powers in the past, naturally also discovered the situation there. Although the Heaven-Mending Pavilion could not truly fathom the extent of the strength of this top expert from the Great Xia Empire. However, the current Butian Pavilion also believes that the Great Xia Empire is the only one capable of confronting the top experts in the Heavenly God Academy and the Forbidden Zone. It seems everyone underestimated the Great Xia Empire. No one expected that there would be such a terrifying existence within the Great Xia Empire. Perhaps this extremely terrifying existence within the Great Xia Empire has already reached the legendary realm. Then, The powerful quasi-emperor at the peak of his realm in the heaven-mending pavilion looked in the direction of the great Xia Empire with a look of shock and disbelief. After he finished speaking, the emotion in his eyes was very strong. Although we in the Batian Pavilion had initially guessed that the Heavenly God Academy might have a legendary expert at the level of a remnant immortal, the Great Xia Empire shocked us even more, because the strength of the expert that the Great Xia Empire displayed this time probably also reached the level of a remnant immortal. At this moment, another powerful figure from the Heaven-mending Pavilion beside him also spoke up leisurely. After he finished speaking, his eyes were filled with shock and disbelief, because he hadn't expected that the Great Xia Empire would also have a legendary powerhouse at the level of a remnant immortal. Of course, for the Heaven-mending Pavilion, a remnant immortal level expert is already the most powerful existence. Therefore, they did not speculate that this top expert of the Great Xia Empire had reached the true immortal realm, but rather that he had reached the remnant immortal level. Even so, they felt that the strength of the Great Xia Empire far exceeded their expectations. Then everyone turned their gaze toward the Great Xia Empire. Among them, the eyes of these quasi-emperors of the Batian Pavilion were still flashing with a different kind of light. Although the strength of the Heaven-mending Pavilion is not particularly great. However, since the great emperor of the past did not produce a quasi-emperor, he was the most outstanding existence in this world. Therefore, the Heaven-mending Pavilion is one of the top forces in this universe. And now, even emperor-level powerhouses have appeared. Therefore, the strength of their Heaven-mending Pavilion cannot be considered the top force in this universe. After all, the number of unconventional Dao-achieving experts in the Patching Heaven Pavilion is far less than that in the Great Xia Empire or the Heavenly God Academy. Moreover, this universe also contains supreme beings and top experts from forbidden zones. Therefore, the Batian Pavilion can only place its last hopes on the Great Xia Empire. Only the Great Xia Empire can resolve the ensuing dark turmoil and the Heavenly God Academy's plan, which has been in the works for millions of years. Otherwise, even if the Heaven-mending Pavilion knew about the impending dark turmoil and the Heavenly God Academy's plan that had been in the works for millions of years, they would still be unable to resolve it. Ultimately, resolving all of this requires absolute strength. However, their Heaven-mending Pavilion does not possess such absolute strength. Currently, the only entity with such absolute power is probably the Great Xia Empire. Therefore, the Batian Pavilion can only place all its hopes on the Great Xia Empire. Of course, the top experts in the Forbidden Area at this time also discovered this peerless expert from the Great Xia Empire. An old man with a withered body slowly walked out of the restricted area. His eyes were vacant. However, the blank look in his eyes quickly disappeared completely. Instead, an incredulous gaze was directed toward the Great Xia Empire. The path to immortality will not open for nearly 100 years. I never expected that I would actually witness the existence of a true immortal before then. Why would a small Great Xia Empire have a true immortal? Then, the withered old man looked toward the direction of the Great Xia Empire with disbelief and speculation in his eyes. Even he hadn't expected that there would be a true immortal in the Great Xia Empire. It should be noted that even this old man's strength was still inferior to that of a true immortal. So now his face not only showed disbelief, but also a hint of worry. Chapter 689, the powerful figures of the Forbidden Zones are recovering one after another. There's speculations about the Heavenly God Academy. It can be said that no one expected that there would be a true immortal in the Great Xia Empire. And just as the old man, whose skin was so dry and rough, finished speaking, suddenly, a blazing flame appeared beside him. Then, a ball of blazing flame began to erupt with terrifying light. The old man naturally felt the terrifying light emanating from that blazing flame. However, at this moment, the old man only glanced lightly at the blazing flame beside him. As the old man gently glanced at the blazing flame beside him, the flame quickly transformed into a middle-aged man engulfed in flames. More importantly, the middle-aged man was entirely red. Even his hair was fiery red. More importantly, the aura emanating from the middle-aged man was in no way weaker than that emanating from the old man beside him. I didn't expect that you old fellow would also be awakened by that person from the Great Xia Empire. It seems that that person from the Great Xia Empire is indeed not as simple as I thought. Then, the middle-aged man's hoarse voice slowly came out. His hoarse voice contrasted sharply with his fiery personality. His voice sounded as if it came from an old man. He, on the other hand, looked extremely fiery. Therefore, his voice sounds quite comical compared to his actual appearance. This being from the Great Xia Empire should be a true immortal, but there shouldn't be any true immortals in this universe right now. Upon hearing the hoarse voice, the old man didn't hesitate at all and voiced his doubts. At the same time, His eyes were filled with a hint of confusion as he looked in the direction of the Great Xia Empire. The moment this top expert from the Great Xia Empire made his move, he sensed that the power of that aura far surpassed that of an ordinary remnant immortal. Therefore, he could guess from this that the top expert of the Great Xia Empire should be a true immortal. However, this universe does not allow powerful beings at the true immortal realm to appear. This surprised the old man greatly. What if he didn't achieve the realm of a true immortal in this universe? The middle-aged man, whose body was still engulfed in flames, spoke again in a hoarse voice. After he finished speaking, his gaze drifted leisurely towards the horizon. At that moment, his gaze seemed to penetrate the entire universe, looking out at the world. At the same time, there was a hint of worry in his eyes. If he weren't from this universe, then he probably couldn't stay here forever, since this universe still has a certain degree of rejection towards top experts from other universes. Just after the middle-aged man finished speaking, another leisurely voice sounded behind him. More importantly, the voice seemed to come from the underworld. It became extremely gloomy and terrifying. As the voice lingered, a dark figure instantly appeared beside the two. The aura emanating from this dark figure was also extremely strange. However, one can still sense that the aura emanating from him has reached the level of a remnant immortal. If he really came from another universe, then we just need to wait a while to find out. After all, he can only stay in this universe for a few years at most. If he hasn't left after a few years, then either he hasn't become a true immortal, or he has a way to leave from somewhere else. Then the dark figure slowly spoke again. After speaking, his gaze lingered on the direction of the Great Xia Empire. He looked towards the direction of the Great Xia Empire with great anticipation. Although he hadn't expected that the Great Xia Empire would possess such a terrifying existence. But now he also wants to know where this most terrifying being in the Great Xia Empire comes from. What we should be focusing on now is the Heavenly God Academy. After all, the Heavenly God Academy has been planning for millions of years. I don't believe that what they are planning has nothing to do with the path to immortality. The middle-aged man with flames burning on his body nodded after hearing the shadowy figure's words, and then stared in the direction of the Heavenly God Academy and spoke in a hoarse voice. After speaking, he frowned and pondered the Heavenly God Academy's plans over the past 10,000 years. The Heavenly God Academy is indeed not as simple as we imagined. After all, the remnant immortals in the Heavenly God Academy seem to be no weaker than the remnant immortals in our Forbidden Zones. Unless all the remnant immortals in our Forbidden Zones are combined, they might be able to defeat the remnant immortals of the Heavenly God Academy. It seems that what they are planning is the path to immortality 100 years from now. The old man who spoke first slowly stepped forward, looking in the direction of the Heavenly God Academy, and then completely shifted the topic from the Great Xia Empire back to the Heavenly God Academy. After all, although there wasn't much connection between the Heavenly God Academy and the top experts in their Forbidden Zone, however, the Heavenly God Academy was unwilling to have too much of a connection with them. More importantly, the Heavenly God Academy also dislikes protecting the human race. This shows that the Heavenly God Academy does not care about the life and death of the human race. Judging from their past instigation of the Dark Rebellion, the Heavenly God Academy doesn't care about the lives or deaths of humans. The only time the Heavenly God Academy joined forces with them was just now, when they fought against the top experts of the Great Xia Empire. Therefore, they felt that the Heavenly God Academy was even more extraordinary. No matter what the Heavenly God Academy plans, they will not only be facing these remnant immortals in our Forbidden Zone, but their real enemy is the Great Xia Empire. After hearing his words, the shadowy figure spoke again silently, his voice carrying a hint of schadenfreude. If the Heavenly God Academy hadn't wanted to kill the person with the destiny of a human emperor, then the Heavenly God Academy wouldn't have completely offended the Great Xia Empire. That's right. The Heavenly God Academy and the Great Xia Empire are already locked in a life-or-death struggle. So whatever the Heavenly God Academy is planning, they have to go through the Great Xia Empire. Therefore, we can wait until the Heavenly God Academy and the Great Xia Empire are both exhausted before we make our move. The middle-aged man, whose body was radiating flames, also lit up instantly upon hearing the words of the dark figure. Then, gazing leisurely in the direction of the Great Xia Empire and the Heavenly God Academy, he spoke. Although the Great Xia Empire and the Heavenly God Academy are both incredibly powerful, making it difficult for them to see through them. However, given the current situation, it is impossible for the Great Xia Empire and the Heavenly God Academy to maintain a friendly and peaceful relationship.